Jacobs. Dr. Hoffman. Ms. Mundy. Mr. Valentine.
Here.
Ms. Williams. Mr. Taylor. Ms. Boston.
Present.
Dr. Eubanks. Thank you.
The Board of Education has convened this evening for the sole purpose to discuss the fiscal year 2016 budget. The work session this evening is the last of 3 budget work sessions and 3 public hearings that this board conducted to develop its budget submission for consideration by the county executive for fiscal year 2016. The purpose of these budget work sessions is to fine-tune the budget proposal sent to us by CEO Dr. Kevin Maxwell so that it meets all of our highest priorities and represents the best spending plan that will serve all of our students and staff across the county. The one thing we all know about the budget process is that change is ever present. Changes in revenue, changes in expenditures, changes at the federal, state, and local levels. Changes in the marketplace which affects planning and cost estimates. Change is synonymous with budgeting, and we are here tonight to make the best decisions we can relative to the dollars we have available for our children so they can be successful in school. We are committed to openness, transparency, and in inclusiveness. All are essential to the work that we do. The CEO's proposal, FY-16 operating budget recommendations of over $1.8 billion represent a 2.5% increase over the FY-2015 approved budget of over $1.7 billion. I will now begin with questions from my colleagues. We will adhere to the 5-minute, 3-minute rule. Mr. Valentine.
Thank you, Vice Chair Boston. My question, Dr. Maxwell, is around your budget plan. As I was reading over the plan over the last couple of days, I was also reviewing your transition plan when you came on as CEO, as well as our latest strategic plan. In my role as appointee to the County Council and as the representative from this body to our state legislative team through MABE, I have a unique view of the fiscal constraints that both our county and our state have around education and the projected cuts that we are hearing being discussed around the state and the county. And I look at your plan and I wonder if the budget that you're proposing is going to get us to where we need to be based on your transition plan and also your strategic plan. And my question is, will it get us there? And if not, what budget amount, what budget plan will get us to where we need to be based on what you proposed when you became CEO, where I believe the people of Prince George's County and our school system believe we should be, a plan that will continue us on the path that I think I find and many of us find ourselves moving on, which is in a positive direction, and whether we have the current budget to get us there. So I'm asking you, do you believe your current budget projection will get us there? And if not, I would request from you and your team to produce that document. Thank you.
So the short and simple answer to the primary question there, it will not get us everywhere we need to go. You know, we built in some sort of, I guess, some projections over time. I think with county staff, and we look at projections, we talk about those things, and we certainly asked for a significant amount of money over maintenance of effort, but not everything we certainly could have asked that we wanted to get there. the county's not funded us over maintenance of effort in a good number of years. I'm not sure if anybody has that exact number of years, but I think it's been 6 or 7 at least. Anybody know the answer to that? Short answer. 2 or 3? So they have given us over maintenance of effort, but by how much? Last year was it 6 million? 2.1 million. So barely. So I think it's fair to say that you know, and I have said this before, we're not funded at the level that we need to be funded to do everything that we're being asked to do. What the district has done, perhaps with the exception of last year, when we tried to put forward some new programs in a very short period of time, and we funded a good part of that out of our own fund balance to try to jumpstart or advance the work. This year, you know, hearing from the county what their projected revenues were, you know, we pared down the request over maintenance of effort that we're going to make, but we are still at 39 million compared to 2 million last year, 17,000 the year before. So, but it isn't everything. When we first started this, it was well over $100 million that we were looking at above maintenance of effort in our request, and we can certainly go back to the drawing board and provide what you asked for, and that would be a document that says this would really move us more quickly to where it is that we want to go and be aligned with our strategic plan. That's not an issue for us or a difficult thing for us to do. The question, of course, is always going to be where does that come from and how do we get there? And those are the tough questions. I mean, we just, you know, the reason we were just kind of running in here, we were just over at the county administration building reviewing the capital budget. And, you know, everybody's heard me say, you know, we have a $2.13 billion backlog on school construction and maintenance facilities needs in this district. And the market's heating up. The cost of buildings is going up. Without us doing a single thing or our buildings deteriorating anymore, the cost of doing this project is going to go up. And we need to have a plan for how we're going to get where we need to go so that it isn't just, you know, like getting what you can get from year to year and going someplace. So we would be happy, you know, to say, you know, here's what we'd really like to be, you know, to be able to do what we want to do. Understand that we probably aren't going to be able to close salary gaps, for example. In 1 year, it's going to be a multi-year kind of issue, but we know that we're behind. Sometimes that's at beginning salaries for different employee groups. Sometimes it's not at beginning salaries, but it's mid-year. We know that you know, there are other needs that we have. They just have very big ticket items, and that money has to come from somewhere if we're going to get it. We don't print our own money. We don't raise our own money. We don't, you know, do any of that. It's got to come from the other sources.
I like most people, that budgets are a value statement, and that we, with our budget as a school system, I think we should establish what we value, and then set the benchmark for our county, and to establish that as a school system, we believe we're moving in the right direction. We believe the investments we've made since you've been CEO have moved us in the right direction. I believe that in the short term, we've demonstrated that the investments have been working, as we've seen with many of the quantitative measures moving in the right direction. And I believe that as a system, we should, again, continue to say what it takes for us to get to where we have to go. This is I know it's a 1, 2, 3, 4 step process. And as we are initiating the process, I believe that we should be very clear about the statement we make about our school system, about what it costs to get to where we need to go, and that we are leading the process as a school system as a first step. Thank you.
Thank you. I certainly agree that we can't, you know, Ms. Jacobs and I were on a panel together down in Annapolis not long ago, and, you know, I certainly agree you can't do more with less. The question, though, always comes around to, at the end, you know, we got to do with what we're allotted. I mean, that's the law as well. But we will certainly, you know, come together and try to provide a better picture of, if funding were not a constraint, what what would we be asking for?
Dr. Kaufman?
Actually, this is a follow-up to the question Mr. Valentine just asked. I know there's discussions at the county level, and including our district, about what we can do on the revenue side. Obviously, making sure that the state continues to provide us as much in terms of GCI and net taxable income, and the funding formula are all important. School construction money are all important actions that we should be supporting, but also also in terms of on the county side, what we can look at in terms of existing funds or new revenues that might support schools, which are obviously the biggest expenditure the county has. But I'm wondering if you and your team have started thinking about, or would be open to thinking about, more creative revenue solutions that would expand our pie somewhat. Because what I fear is that even if we're able to address the revenue issue locally and expand, what we have, we're always going to be playing catch up with some of our surrounding districts, just because they have a stronger tax base. The population, the income level of the population is higher in many cases, and so it's going to be hard for us, whether it's in the area of compensation or other areas where we're trying to keep pace, if not make up lost ground. We're always going to be in this sort of catch-up mode. So, and I'm not an expert on these things, but things like qualified zone academy bonds that some school districts have issued that allow you to focus on getting a federal match for STEM academies or English language learner academies or teacher training. You and I know have talked a little bit about social impact bonds, which is a growing wave where school districts and cities are essentially working out public-private arrangements. They're not really bonds, but contracts essentially, that if you're able to meet certain performance standards, so it might be in the area of early childhood education or again, teacher performance, that you can attract money. And then if the private capital that's financing these doesn't actually result in better results, and the district doesn't lose anything, but if the results are met, then they get a percentage of those profits. There's obviously a lot of foundations have given money to certain school districts. DC is a good example, where you had a bunch of large foundations jump in to support some of the early reform efforts that we're doing there, that were obviously very high profile, but that we're doing there. So I'm not asking you necessarily to lay out everything that you may have thought of or be looking into, but just wanted to was wondering, have some of those discussions started, and recognizing that they may not be things that would even impact this upcoming year, but it might be 1 or 2 years or more down the road, for thinking about how could we look outside the box a little bit more, think about other creative financing arrangements, some of which may be something that would involve a county school district partnership or other type of arrangements. Again, I'm not an expert on these things, but some of the things that I've heard about sound like they might be something that we should be looking at.
Yeah, so there are some conversations both with the county and at the state level going on about some alternatives or some ways, I guess, to expand the pot of money. We just again came from county government. I know there's a work group that's operating at the state level on the capital side of things. I will say that there is some legislation that allows for some work under certain circumstances to be funded by private enterprise. So we had a couple of building projects that were done in my previous role that were funded by private developers and sources of funding. But they're usually pretty limited, not systemic, if that makes any sense. I mean, people have a specific interest that they're engaged with, and that's the one that they want to see done. We're certainly not opposed to any of those. The state is the authorizing organization under school funding, and so we're happy to pursue what other options may be there.
Well, I for one would love to be part of any discussions that might be happening at the district county level, and certainly my fellow board members are interested. But bringing together some of our best minds to think about what are some of the sort of creative out of the box ideas, and then figuring out which of those might be promising, bringing in experts if needed to talk with us and give us a little bit more
direction in terms of how we should approach it. My sense is that some of these things are already being done in other areas, or at least being talked about in other areas, and if we can get in, be a pioneer, then we might be able to bring in millions into the school district in ways that not only would be helpful in expanding the pie, but actually would be tied to, in some cases, performance of how we do as a district, and allow us to really put our money where our mouth is. So, would love to be a part of that if we want to start moving on that front. Thanks.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes, I want to extend what the questions that Dr. Kaufman asked just a few minutes ago, because I too was thinking about some creative ways of getting funding to support what we need. I'm very concerned about the $2 billion we need for our school construction, and maybe the $21 million plus that we need for our fields, our athletic fields. So I would like to suggest that we think about an alliance of funding for at least the fields, and because I think corporations might be receptive to advertising in our fields. Suppose they gave each of 5 groups gave us $5 million, and in each of our fields we could have those companies like what is it, the flags that you see in the various stadiums. It used to be Virginia Slims. I happen to play tennis, and that's where my mind is 20 years ago. But every time you saw the tennis match, you saw Virginia Slims. If we could encourage these corporations to use their advertising money to fund what we know will be difficult for us to fund, I think we could help them by advertising for them, and they could help us and help our children. So and then a creative way of getting money for the construction of the schools. We have a couple of ways presented to us already. But let's see if we could come up with some ways to get that $2 billion. I think we can do it. And if we try very hard, we could probably do it over a 5 or 10 year period. I have other questions, though, about grade by choice and closing the gaps. And my song has been that we can't really close the gaps appreciably unless we figure out how to address students who are at the basic level, and how we must address ELL learners. Now, I am very pleased with what we are doing as far as programming for ELLs. We have a very well-developed, well-articulated program for ELL learners, but I don't see anything similar to that for basic students and ELL and double basic students. And so we've got 16,000 maybe ELL students that some of whom will be serviced by the programs that we're proposing, and we've got about 14,000 or so ELL learners for whom we have not defined a program yet. And I understand that we can't close the gap in a year, but we have to start, and I don't see a start with those basic learners yet. And I'm sure that there is a start, I just don't see it. And unless we put that on paper and have something very similar to what we have in the budget under SBB for the ELL learners, and in the budget that we have under academic affairs, administrative academic affairs for that group, and unless we expand what we have in the budget for the ELL learners, not just 800 or 400 or whatever, 16,000, we've got to figure out what to do for. And at the same time, we have to figure out what to do for the ELL learners. And we cannot choose to do one and not the other. We must do them simultaneously. And I think we can do that too. We might have to cut back in some area to build up in another area, but I think that we can do it. Then the other questions that I have are about our debt. What is our debt? I don't know. I want to thank the budget committee for the answers. I know you worked hard, you did a good job, but I'm still not clear on what that debt is. I know you gave me a ratio, but I wasn't sure what that ratio was for. What is the debt?
Do you have that, or do we need to get back to her? I know that we know what we're paying for debt service.
Because before we can even entertain the thought of borrowing any money, we've got to know what that debt is, and we've got to make sure that we don't exceed the 5%, I think, of the
I'm being told page
unrestricted.
33. Who's got page 33?
Huh?
Excluding the energy performance contracts, we are not over, would not be over our debt threshold for 16.
Okay. Well, if we get to know what the debt is, we can figure out what the unrestricted budget is, and we can see just how close we are to that. And the reason it's important, because we can't bring to you suggestions of, borrowing money if we are not in a position to borrow. We don't know. And we need to, I think, we want to know, and I hope we can get that information.
Dr. Anderson, there's a schedule attached that provides the detail on our debt. It's in the back of the package in the attachments, attachment
I
to
just couldn't
question
find
9.
I just couldn't find the debt. You said regarding question 9, you gave the ratio.
It's
and all,
right
and you
after
said
page 20.
At the page 20.
It's entitled Attachment Question 9.
Okay,
It shows the 9-year debt history.
okay. And what
And is that money we're paying for bonds that the county has? What?
No, the debts you're talking about are lease purchases that we've done for our
So like-
buses, textbooks,
Right.
computer equipment. And then the
Computer
energy
refresh.
contracts are separate from that. The board exempted the energy contracts from the debt ratio it approved. If we look at these other types of alternative finance, we can revisit that policy with the board to make adjustments based upon how much of that debt we would get involved with.
So are we saying that our debt is about 136 million? About 137 million?
Yes.
Yes.
That's what it,
Okay,
It's
all right,
projected to
then
be.
I see it. And then,
And it's broken down by non-energy performance contracts and energy performance
I got it.
contracts. So the non-energy is 73.2 million.
I got it, thank you. And now the unrestricted budget is what?
The unrestricted budget, the request is 1.8 billion for 16. But there's some things backed out for the purpose of this projection to make it 1.7.
But
Billion to calculate.
a portion of that is also restricted. Huh?
Yes.
So what is the unrestricted?
The estimate is 1.7 billion. It's on that page on the last column. Projected
unrestricted?
FY-16, unrestricted is 1.7 billion.
1.7. Okay. Right. Okay. Okay. All right. Just one other question, please. I hope I'm within my. I'm sorry. I have to wait for my second turn.
I don't see where anybody else have buzzed in. Anybody else want to buzz in for first round? Ms. Williams?
I'm trying to find specifically where it is in the budget, but it's in the category of, just a second, other fixed charges, I guess is under the business management services. Can you talk to me about it's like the very last page under other costs, other fixed charges, where you list the total amount is for like $48 million. It's for total operating and non-operating costs, and you list a number of line items that refer to charges that are not, I guess, allocated somewhere else in the budget. I want to say around page 154. Now, on that, in that area, you have two that really stand out that sort of caught my attention, and one was for food services and Brava subsidies. First, can you talk about what the Brava subsidies are?
Can you give me a page number?
154, other fixed charges.
Is that the BOE Performing Arts Center? So we entered into a partnership a long time ago with the BOE community to build the Performing Arts Center in BOE, which is attached to the high school. And we are, I don't know, we're in a cooperative agreement with them. And we use that sometimes for school system events. They use it sometimes for public events. And this money is our portion of the work that we do with Bravo.
I just wasn't sure what that was. Now,
It was one of the first public sort of partnerships with the board for a building project. It was done, I want to say, almost 20 years ago. I was here when part of those discussions were coming around, so it was 15 or 20 years ago, I guess, and they built that. It's actually run by this group called Brava, and again, we use it, we subsidize part of it, we help build part of it.
is this the same thing we do with park and planning on facilities that we have attached to other schools?
It's a little, I think it's different than the park schools. This is just it's a pretty unique partnership, again, between the BOE community and the school system.
Okay, I just wasn't sure what that was at all. The other question is around the food services line item. We have $2.7 million, I believe, associated with that line item there. Is that the same as we have listed in the very beginning of the book that shows how much we're subsidizing food services, the $2.7 million? I believe that's what it is.
Yes.
And so as we move into the food services section, we also have, let me see if I can find the page. On page 203, we have $2.7 million also in that budget. Are those two the same dollars? Are we talking about the same dollars in the budget here in the BMS section under other fixed charges and under food services? Are those the same dollars that we're talking about?
Yes.
So are we calculating that twice in the budget? How is it shown differently?
No, it's an expenditure on the general fund portion of the budget and on the non-general fund portion of the budget, and it's in the special revenue fund for food services, a revenue.
So you're showing it as a revenue on the food services budget and an expenditure?
Revenue or a transfer, but it's a interfund transfer.
It's a fund transfer.
Yes.
So when we're including the under other fixed charges where we have $48 million associated with total operating and non-operating dollars for the fixed charges section, and then we go into the food services section, we're talking one is being transferred to the other. Is that what we're saying? Is that how it works in this budget?
Yes, but the 48 million, those negatives you see, we talked about that before, that is the placeholders for the reductions that we have to make to this budget. Remember in the first session I talked about, in order to make this work, we showed, if you look back on page 17 and 18, almost $76 million of realignment and redirected resources. These identified here are part of those placeholders for that until we go in and specifically identify about $30 million of reductions and how that will be spread across programs. If I can back up and give you a kind of an overview of the magnitude of this budget and where we started. When we started looking at this budget in October and working with staff, our required expenditure growth based upon programs we started, mandatory cost increase to continuing certain services, looking at initiatives that Dr. Maxwell started in 15, that growth was $150 million. At the time, our revenue growth, net revenue growth, was close to $1 million. So we started with a $149 million problem. We took $30 million off the table to start with. There were $12 million that we've talked about in this meeting that we delayed implementation for expansion of programs, another $18 million for initiatives that were important to the school system, but given the fiscal situation, we couldn't fund. So it got us down to about $119 million. And then we redirected almost $76 million of resources, and that's identified on page 17 and 18. And we asked the county for an additional $39 million to close that gap. That's how we balanced this budget moving into 16. The placeholders here is, as I said in the first work session, we're working on looking at, absent any additional revenue, how we're going to make those specific cuts. We've identified almost $10 million of them potentially, but the $30 million, we're still going through a vetting process to decide how we would do that.
So when you're talking about having the placeholder here in order to move it to another location, that's really the most confusing part about understanding the placeholders, how we are approving them here and how they are implemented over the time that we're working through this budget. Could you give us just a brief overview? Because when I see it in the category of other fixed charges, the ones that are about, insurance and, FICA and all that, that's very clear. But when you're talking about going from a food service that's in this other fixed charges under the BMS group and putting it into another grouping or another department, that's sort of where it's confusing. So if you could talk about that placeholder and category transaction and how that looks to us as we process this budget throughout the year.
Okay, well, look. No, she's asking a different question, Mark. The food service program is set up as a special revenue fund. So if we're taking money from the general fund to support it, that's an inter-fund transfer because they're separate fund. That's the term in nonprofits and particularly government schools called funds. That's why it's called fund accounting. I like to drop the D and call it fund accounting. But so you have to show that as a transfer, a expenditure in this fund and a receipt of dollars in the other fund. The placeholder is because we haven't specifically identified where we're going to make the cuts. We're still working through those process. We had to show it in this document so you can see the full amount, which is shown on page 17, 18 in the summary at $30 million. That still needs to be determined where specifically we're going to make those reductions. We're hopeful that we wouldn't have to make those reductions if something changed with revenue. Had the governor's budget proposal included the amount of revenue we should have been entitled to by law and not cut GCI, then we would make these placeholders disappear in this budget document. There was discussion earlier about revenue. To the extent before this budget is finalized, we will have to make a decision about either increasing revenue sources somewhere else to eliminate these placeholders of some $30 to $40 million, or actually identifying where we're going to make the cuts. Does that help?
I think it answers part of the question
Okay.
about how it's in the budget. The other question is, how do we follow it when we are
Can I cut you off now? I think you've over
Am I
your
over my
limit.
time?
And I will add you to round 2.
Am I over my time?
I'll add you to round 2. Mr. Burrows?
I guess my question goes, first I want to thank the Budget Office for the work that you do every day. I want to welcome our new Budget Director. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you. This is John Pfister's first meeting. We just kind of jumped right into questions, but John Pfister, you approved him. He's on board. He started. He's really enjoying the work. I was down to visit him in his office the other day. He was really excited with the opportunity to be here and to help us through these opportune times.
Great. This question, might be better posed when Dr. Davis and Dr. Joseph are here, because it goes to something that Dr. Anderson mentioned earlier, and that is, there's some awesome things that are happening across the district, and they're continuing to happen, which I'm very proud to be a part of. But I'm not seeing the push behind the double basic students. I think we're we're excelling in specialty programs, specialty program expansion. But financially, what is the push? What do we need to do as a board to ensure that we are distributing the funds to equity? We're giving, what is the saying? That we're raising the floor and the ceiling at the same time, and we're leaving no students behind.
So I think, part of the answer to that question is embedded in Mr. Valentine's, beginning question of what does it really take to move us the rest of the way forward. But the second part is embedded in what we're coming to you with next month, which is the strategic plan, where we've been talking about a tremendous focus on literacy. Nobody should misunderstand that we do have an instructional program available for all kids. Is it getting us where we need to go with all kids? The answer to that question we all know is no. But I think that, from the work that we're doing on professional development, the curriculum audit that we're doing to make sure we're aligned with the work, all of those things feed together into this. And so we're working with the University of Maryland to identify the right metrics to measure, to make sure that we're looking at the right things. There's a group there at the University of Maryland that we've been working with. So all these pieces are moving together, and I think that you'll hear, I think when you see the strategic plan, you'll see the focus of the different areas of the district. One doesn't operate without the other. Not having, the equitable compensation, for example, with our folks doesn't help that issue, even though what you seem to be asking about is really the instructional focus. But it takes good teachers, just as it takes professional development. Those are in different categories of the professional plan, but they're all interlocked. They're all interconnected. But I think, again, part of it is we know what it would take for us to increase that funding. But right now it's out of our reach, but we're happy to come and tell you what that is and what the board can advocate for and how you can support us. And you're welcome to increase your budget when you adopt it on the 24th. We'll tell you what that would take. I'm not going to argue with that. I'm just, with the conversations we had, we built a budget based around certain parameters, but you guys are free to adopt a budget that represents, that work, and we'll bring that budget to you.
Absolutely, thank you. And that plan will be with us in March.
The strategic plan is right now scheduled, I think, for March 26th.
Okay.
For that meeting.
Cool. Thank you.
You are adopting, I think, the mission and vision core values tonight. Thursday. A lot of meetings this week.
They all run together.
Ms. Hernandez?
Good evening, everyone. And my question kind of just stems off of what everyone else has been talking about, but more so, we've seen, or I'm seeing a lot of improvement in expanding specialty programs, but I'm kind of curious because, from a public standpoint and a community standpoint, I know there's a strong desire for improved programming in neighborhood schools, so I'm kind of just curious to see how the budget addresses improving our neighborhood schools.
So we can get a more thorough response, and again, part of that, I think is embedded in strategic planning and the work we're doing across the board. We did do some adjustments to school-based budgeting, some other things during the last school year. We hired some additional art and music teachers. We put some additional advanced placement teachers in certain ones of our schools. I mean, it's not like specialty programs is the only thing we've done. Those of you that sat through the budget, discussions last year, and those of you that are looking at that this year and looking at the enhancements that we did last year and this year, those went to neighborhood schools. Those were not just specialty programs. But there are the double issues that I think have already been mentioned. One of them is making sure that the system is attractive for people who are in our school system right now, to convince them that this is the place for them to remain, and to attract people who right now are making other alternatives to come back. And then the other one is lifting everything. So I think Mr. Burrows said, raising the ceiling at the same time raising the floor. We are focused on both those things, but we can do a better job maybe in answering that question, to say here are the things that we've done to enhance in the past year and the things that we have as enhancements going into the next year. Now, I would caution everybody that the budget that we presented does hold back some of the new academy programs, which are neighborhood, school programs, because of the budget constraints. We expand the next year of programs that we already have in place, but we postponed some of those. And again, that high school reform, that school reform program is there. But we'll try to lay that out in a 1 or 2 page document rather than, yeah. And we understand that we need more.
Great. And I have another off-topic or different topic question. I don't know if I should save that for the next round or... Okay, great. Just, this came up randomly in a conversation today, but I'm just curious to see where we are on deferred maintenance.
We can break that out for you. I mean, overall, again, it's $2.13 billion, but that includes maintenance, it includes facilities. I don't know if you have a more specific number. We could get it for you. We can sort of get it for the board. What?
We'll provide the response. We just left the county government, and I took that notebook back to the office.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Eubanks?
Good evening, colleagues. Sorry that I was a little late today, but I've already heard about Miss Boston's stellar reputation for moving things along. So
she's doing,
I'm sure
you're doing another awesome job tonight, Dr.
People
Eubanks.
appreciated that I was a little late. And I apologize if some of this has been covered. So 2 quick questions. I know have kind of put some placeholders in the budget around dealing with our staffing issues and particularly around the current commitments that we have to contracts, and some of that will be revisited. I'm wondering, number one, if you can summarize for me a little bit. Particularly, we went through the 4 or 5 years of staff freezes. How many steps have we recovered in our current agreements, and how many are we behind? And just generally, what kind of data or information you have about kind of where we stand in our compensation and benefits compared to some of our neighboring districts. I know that's a big one, and it should have been, I meant to put this in the data one, and I'll get that around. So I apologize that I'm dropping a big question like that on you now, but just general, and then you can follow up with data later on.
So the salary comparisons is a little easier than some of the other benefit compensation. So when you say salary and compensation in one breath, we might hear something different than you mean. But salary is one piece of it. Mm-hmm. But what health care benefits people have and other kinds of things, insurance benefits, those levels are not quite as easy to get our hands on. The Maryland Negotiating Service puts out regular reports and things, and I actually just had an updated salary comparison book handed to me about 45 minutes or an hour ago, and
you up on for this one very nicely.
You did. So actually, I just was sharing it with Christian as we started the meeting, because I knew I was going to have to answer more questions than Christian was. but we are very interested in that conversation. And I would just say in a summary, and I know my friend Lou Robinson is in the room, and I would say to you, look, in the Great Recession, we lost thousands of employees. We froze salaries. We offered buyouts to ask people at higher salaries to, here we're going to try to make this worth your while to leave early, and we lost a lot of experience that way. I can't quantify for you right this second how many steps we lost or how many percentages. PGCA actually probably knows that better than I know it, but three steps. And each of those steps is approximately $11 to $13 million a piece. That's not per employee. That's the whole compensation.
Thank you for that clarification.
But I think it speaks to the issue that if we had not gone through the Great Recession, our employees would be making about another 30. Well, at least our teachers. I mean, they got some other smaller organization there, but certainly you're in the 33 to $39 million range just for teachers. You're probably in excess if we were going to make all that up. Of course, competitively, some other districts lost as well, and so to make up the difference between competitiveness and compare you to other districts is a different number than that, because most districts gave up compensation increases and or people or both, just as Prince George's County did. Prince George's County took a really big hit. It's a really big organization with a lot of employees and a lot of students, the second largest, as you know, in the state. But we're happy, as you know, because we said we were happy publicly that we reached bargaining agreements with all of our bargaining units last year before the end of the year, and that compensation helped a little, but it certainly did not play the catch-up role that you're asking about.
And quick follow-up, this is definitely not to be answered now, but as we begin to look at this, I would look forward to data that would probably come this year to kind of look first at the impact that we made with improving our recruitment and retention based on what we've done already, and hopefully some projections about if we really want to get to where we need to get, what it is that we need. So, and I want to definitely be part of that. One other quick question, somewhat related. We started the Peer Assistance and Review Program last year, and we were very excited about it. I know it's already launched to my understanding, to kind of rave reviews, and it's very effective. And I know we're keeping it, but not expanding it as we initially had planned in last year's budget. Could you talk about kind of the implications for what impact that could have, in particular in terms of the number of brand new teachers we will be able to give a mentor to, and then if we were to have expanded, how much that would have costed?
So we can bring that as a part of the numbers we were asked to bring. If we were really going to do everything that we wanted to do, we can certainly give you that number. As I think we've discussed earlier, we're way below the recommendation of the state for the numbers of mentor teachers that we should have. When we brought the PAR group on, because it's going to take us a while to build that out, we sort of have I don't know if triage is quite the right word, but the mentor teachers, every new teacher has a mentor teacher assigned to them, but they make some pretty quick judgments about who needs some more help and who's doing a great job coming out of the beginning. And the ones that are having the most struggles have been referred to PAR as of the second half of the year, because the first half of the year we spent, starting July 1 when the budget took effect, identifying teachers, training teachers, and we started a little bit earlier than we thought we would. But we made the judgment that we made in the budget going forward, again, knowing that we don't have the ratio that is recommended. It's not a requirement, but it is a recommendation. We know that we would like to have more. We increased mentor teachers last year. We added the PAR program. I mean, that puts us at, but holding it steady again under the constraints or what we were being told by the funding sources looked like, reasonable funding stretch, we had to make some tough decisions to come to you. And as I also said a little while ago, it's going to be your budget to come from February 24th. And so if you want to adjust it upward, I did say at the last meeting, and I'll reiterate it now, you certainly shouldn't go down, because we shouldn't be making cuts until we know what the final word is on the revenue sources. So, but we'll bring you some numbers to look like in time for you to make some considerations on the 24th.
So, finally, not another question, but just to really commend the staff. I know we've asked a lot of questions. I've been perusing the reports that you gave us to all of the questions that we asked as board members. The 4 documents that were sent to us the other day, and I just want to commend the staff for how thorough and complete those answers are. I know that was probably quite a lift, and we may have a few more coming, but I really appreciate your team's responsiveness.
Thank you.
Ms. Jacobs?
Thank you. My questions are really around the, can you tell me how much, let me apologize up front that I don't have the packet that has the answers to the questions in front of me. My computer crashed. But that being said, what was the amount set aside for the class size balancing for September? So in other words, when we, each year for SBB, we set aside a certain amount to help right
$5
size.
million.
5 million?
Yes.
So my
in the FY-16, the total for SBB is $450 million. That doesn't include fringes. That's just salaries and other discretionary costs, and the $5 million set aside for classroom balancing.
So in every year, that's, I know it obviously it'll change based on the number of students that come in, and we're not sure. And that seems like a low number to me this year. I understand where you are. And I'm concerned about class sizes as they are now. And I guess my question would be, in light of the pending issue around GCEI and other areas, do you think that would be an area where you would be recommending to the board to reduce that amount for set aside? Because I'm already concerned about class sizes.
So I hope not, but it is one of the things that we had on the list that we passed out at the last meeting and then sent to everybody in the Friday packet. Because with 85 to 87% of our budget being around people, you know, something has to give somewhere. And you know, again, trying to explain, you know, we kind of put out there a number of equivalent teachers, and we put some other things in there. You can't reduce the number of teachers you have and not either have class size go up or programs end or, you know, something happen. At the same time that we're trying to address these issues, how do we improve achievement across the board? You know, it's a place we don't want to be. So I spoke to the state delegation a week ago Friday, and I was asked a number of times in different iterations the same questions about what are you going to cut? And, you know, finally, you know, after, again, the same question sort of being asked in different ways a number of times, I said, I hope I'm not going to have to cut any of it, because I'd like my delegation to
work to get us the money.
To put the money back, right? I mean, you know, that's the answer to not having cuts is in revenue, and we don't borrow enough money to fix all that. We don't, you know, we can't keep using fund balance instead of any fund balance left. But the state has some issues that they have to deal with around revenue, and I agree with you. I don't really want class size to go up, but at the end of this whole process, if we're cut the whole 38, we would have $38 more million if the governor was not doing what he was doing to the budget. Yes, we got an increase based on, we had an enrollment increase, and relative to other districts, our poverty went up. But had he not done the net taxable income delay, if he hadn't changed the formula expansion that is in law, was in law, is in law, and hasn't been changed yet, and then the 20.26 or something like that in GCEI, those two numbers add up to $38 million. So it's about $20 million in GCI and about $18 million in the things that are in the BRFA. So you know, our legislators in Annapolis across the state can stop the 18 for sure. They just need to do that.
I agree with you. I think I'm just having this feeling
Right.
of deja vu, and it's these are tough decisions, and so you know, as the board thinks about what budget to approve, you know, we've been down the road of increasing class sizes, and we see the effect and the impact that it has on kids. And so the reason I bring that up is because sometimes you have to make those tough decisions, and the tough decision might be going to, I think what I heard Ms. Hernandez say about neighborhood schools. How are we going to make sure that we do the best we can where most kids are in terms of that? And I just think sometimes the things we want to do, we can't do. And it might be a sacrifice to not increase class sizes. And that's a lot of money. I think it's $9 million per student or something like that. I get that. But those are tough decisions. And now we're faced with it. And maybe we won't be. That'll be a great thing. But I just want to throw that out there because I think once we start going down that road again, it has huge impact on teachers, and definitely it has a huge impact on kids.
And I want the people that are providing the funding to understand we're not doing these decisions because we want to do them. We're doing it because they're not providing us with the revenue that we need.
And my other question, I just didn't see it, or at least couldn't tell how it was working in here. This is sort of an aside. On the IB program, have we reached the point where we are able to actually provide, where students are, where is the certificate program as opposed to just going through the process and students? In other words, are they actually graduating now with, or is that rolled into the secondary school reform piece?
So in IB language, there are two parts of IB.
Correct.
One is the diploma program. That's what our programs have been starting at, and I'll have to get you an answer about whether we're doing any certificate programs.
Because at one time it was said that we weren't at that point. I don't know if it was a funding issue, and so I would like to get that, whether or not we are at that place in terms of that.
So we are awarding certificates and diplomas is the answer that's being passed to me. But I believe we have capacity in IB, and I think that part of what we would like to see and that we've talked about before is part of the issue with our IB program is that there's no pipeline. We ought to be starting in primary years, moving into middle years, and then finishing it with either, preferably the diploma program, but certainly for kids who are taking a lot. I mean, in BOE, for example, they and a number of other schools, they have a pretty high AP participation. And what certificate program allows you to do is take particular parts of that program and not really get the IB diploma, but allow you to achieve, part of it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that's good for kids. It's just that I think from an expansion perspective, we always wanted to get there. And then my other question, last one before the next round, was around the alternative ed program. So we always have this discussion at budget time. They're not included in the SBB formula. So I guess my question is more of a how are they doing at this point? Because they struggle. They're the smaller schools, so they're not included. But then these are students who need an alternative option, which I hate calling it alternative, but they need more intervention or they need more services. And it just seems like each year in the budget, they look the same. We're not putting, in my opinion, enough energy around that. That's not a criticism of the administration. I'm just saying in general, moving those students ahead as well is just as important. And so I'm wondering how we can, or maybe you can tell, maybe I didn't see it, and maybe you can tell me there actually is more dedicated to those students. And I'm thinking virtual learning, which at one time we were talking about expanding that piece for those students.
So somebody might be able to quantify that in a question for you that we can send to you. I know we are having conversation about actually expanding alternative education, believing that we have more students that would benefit than we are currently providing enough seats for. We're having a pretty big conversation about digital literacy. A lot of these things just have to run parallel. I think you understand how that is. And actually, in response to the first question from tonight, part of that answer will be a digital literacy piece. I mean, we haven't been able to expand digital literacy in any substantial way in the district.
Which is more than, online learning. And I think people
it's not
sometimes don't
just
really
that,
understand that it's more expansive.
It's a combination of different devices and tools, and it's a way of doing things and opportunities.
I have one question, and maybe one that you might have to maybe bring me the numbers later. But I wanted to know what would be the cost, the additional cost to extend our PPWs, our people personnel workers, to 11-month employees, based on the fact of, you know, some of the behavior issues we have, and I do know that they're limited on how much they can do over the summer, which is crucial sometimes to prepare them and get students in school, especially in our attendance rate. So,
Yeah, we'll get you an answer
can you
to
give
that
me those
question.
numbers when you can?
We'll get you an answer. I don't know the answer off the top.
Thank you, because I think we're talking about 50 employees. It's like it's 50.
50?
I think so.
We'll get her the answer to that question. Yeah, 50 employees. I mean, you know, pretty much whatever the cost of that 50 is, it's about 10% more because if they're operating on a 10-month year and you want to go to 11 months, you're adding essentially 10 months of salary to all 50. So whatever that is, we'll get that answer for you.
Great, thank you. Ms. Mundy?
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I just had a couple questions. When will we be receiving the revised budget? I know the budget that we have and that we're looking at, and that may be a question that was answered, so I apologize for coming late, but do you have a forecast when we'll be receiving the revised budget with the cuts or any other real numbers?
So cut-wise, again, I'm happy to answer the question over and over again so everybody gets it right. I don't recommend we cut anything until we know what the actual revenue is. That process takes place in June when the budget comes back to us. In the meantime, as we continue to hear what's going on in the legislature and the deliberations at the county, you know, we'll get a better and better idea, and we'll start, you know, preparing some recommendations to bring to the board. As far as other adjustments, there have been some questions here earlier tonight about whether or not this will really get us all the way to where we want to go, and if not, what would. And so we'll be bringing some additional expenses for the board to consider between now and the 24th. Certainly by the 24th, we're running a little short on time right now, but we will work diligently on that between now and then, and get you what we can as quickly as we can.
Okay, thank you. I had another question. In the budget, it says something about a Brava subsidy. What is
we
that?
just answered that question. It's the BOE. It's the BOE Performing Arts Center and the collaborative partnership that we're in.
Okay, sorry again, I came
Okay.
a little late. And my last question was regarding the ombudsman's position that was, I think, reallocated or realigned to the Chief of Staff's office. So I saw that a cost center was created for that position, but no position was added in the list of positions for the Chief of Staff's office, even though there was money set aside resource-wise for that. Is there more of a breakdown for that particular cost center for the ombudsman's position?
So I can't speak to cost centers, but I can tell you that the budgeted line item is still in our budget, and we went through a process to identify a candidate, and at the end didn't come out with a candidate. And so we want to make sure that we, you know, review some of the questions and things that were centered around that before we go back out to advertise. So for right now, it's sort of sitting in the same category it was before we, you know, had candidates to interview. It's sort of in a freeze category, just waiting while we resolve some of the issues that came up around that interview and hiring process.
Right. Okay. But we still plan to fill it sometime next fiscal year. So the
maybe even before. It's just a question of whether we can, you know, kind of get to a point of making sure we're, you know, on the same page about everything.
Okay, and just one follow-up to that. What resources have been allocated to support that function? I know there had been some discussion
So that's
about
one of the conversations that
travel
came
things.
up around the discussions was, what does the whole thing look like?
Yes.
And that's something we're trying to resolve.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Grady?
Good evening. My question is related to, in reviewing the budget, just trying to get a sense of and I know that strategic plan is coming soon, but the increase of parental engagement activities, especially given the implementation of PARC, how does that fit into the budget? Or, you know, what are the plans, if anything, as relating to that?
So I think there are a couple different ways to think about it. I mean, we doubled the number of parent liaisons that we had last year from about 31 to 61. I think that's right. the new budget does not have additional ones in there, but we did do a doubling last year. It's not to say we wouldn't like to have them in all of our high poverty and second language schools, and some of those are duplicated conversations. Some of them are both. So we went down with the funding that we had last year, a list of schools, and said we have the money to fund this far, and that's where we funded, and we stopped, and we left it at that as we built this budget. We also last year realigned some resources in the district and created this Office of Community Engagement. That's not the exact right name, but we have organized that office. We have some people assigned to that office, not enough people, and we know that. We also, though, with the reorganization and the hiring of a new person to lead that work last year, we don't show an expansion yet in this budget. That would again be part of what we would come back to the board with to say, if we were really going to try to do everything that we want to do as quickly as we can, we would expand both of those things, both parent advocates and expand the office. Because with only 4 or 5 individuals, you can't really do a robust job of 205 schools and the respective communities.
Are you finished, Ms. Grady? Yes. All right, thank you. Are we in round 2 now? Dr. Anderson?
Just a couple of questions. One is still regarding the debt. You know, I see a $1.7 billion unrestricted budget, and 5% of that is about $85 million. It looks like we're still over that in terms of the debt that we are experiencing now. And I bring that up because it's a critical piece for us to look at.
So I think we should come back with an answer to the question, you know, for the board on.
It's in the book that the debt is about 130-some million, and the 5% of the unrestricted is about 85 million. So we need to look at that for a plan, with a plan of how we're going to address that piece, because it's inconsistent with our policy.
So I was just trying to get clarity on where you're looking, because if you're looking in the budget book, you're looking at FY 2014, and according to your requests and the questions you asked for on the January 14th Budget Finance and Audit Committee meeting, we provided you with a more detailed schedule attachment.
I'm looking at attachment.
Question
9. Yeah. And I'm reading, and you tell me if I'm reading this incorrectly, that our outstanding debt is $136,713,483.
That's projected. That is the projected amount.
Yeah. But remember, the board exempted the energy performance contracts from that ratio. So you're only looking at the $73.2 million.
Okay, so the board exempted that.
Yes, when the board approved the energy management contracts in 2007, it exempted that specific debt from the overall
ratio. Does the budget book say that?
I don't know if the budget book says.
Because I think the budget book says it should not exceed 5% of the unrestricted budget.
Correct.
Well,
so
if it is, it's something you probably want to clean up.
Yeah.
I mean,
so it's actually 4% when you just compare it to the unrestricted amount. So we are below that amount.
The unrestricted, once you take out the energy.
Correct, and I think that's why we provided you the schedule to show you that we are in compliance with the board policy.
But I was operating under what I thought I read in the budget, that it's 5% of the unrestricted budget.
Correct, and I think we were in an attempt to show you the total debt in transparency in the budget book, but I think as you indicated in the FAB committee, in terms of being more transparent, we're going to break it down to be more relative in terms of how it's compared to the unrestricted budget as it relates to the board policy.
Okay, you know, I just want to get the policy on that, but thank you. It's okay. I have a question for you, Dr. Maxwell. You said that you don't want to cut now. Does that mean that you won't cut line items within the proposed budget?
So I think what I'm trying to say is I've been asked and I was asked at the last budget workshop about whether we should cut the $38 million that the state's saying they're not going to fund. And the answer to that is no, because the deliberations aren't over. They still have to pass the BRFA, for example, to cut about $18 million out of our budget, even though it's not in what the governor released. He needs the legislature to agree with that. There is legislation that's been introduced to make GCI required as opposed to discretionary. Whether that has a chance or not, I don't know. I'm not in the legislature, but I think it's premature to cut until we get a budget back from the county government, because the county also has the ability, legally, whether they have it resource-wise is a different question, but I did say when I was over for the budget meeting with the county that I was going to ask the county to make up any shortfalls that I have, from the state, which would just add to the request. So I still think we're in a revenue-seeking position, not in a, I don't want to spend the next, several months just talking about cutting. If we want to do the work that we're being asked to do, again, I know that I pared back my request to try to come close to what I thought the response, the possibilities might be. Mm-hmm. And I'm not ready to throw in the towel on the rest of that. And I'm happy to come back to the board, as I was asked earlier, with what does the real number look like? And we can give that to you before the 24th. I'm not sure how much before the 24th, but we can certainly get it to you before the 24th, so that you at least have that to look at. But what I meant when I said I don't think we should cut anything, whether it's by line item or category or anything like that. I think right now we have put forward a budget that we thought was responsible, that helps us at least maintain where we are, including the improvements that we've made. They're in there. The salary improvements are in there. Everything that we've proposed to do in the last year, and the few new things for this year, like the STEM magnet middle school program in Oxon Hill, all those things are in the budget, and we should leave them in the budget until we have a bottom line.
I think it's wise to do exactly what you're doing as far as the bottom line is. I hesitate to think that we should not attempt to make changes in line items, or for what is the purpose of these hearings if we're going to stick to what the original presentation was.
So the board, as I also said, I thought you were asking me if I would recommend changes. No, I've given you my budget. If the board wishes to say we'd like to reduce, as you did last year, when you said let's enhance community outreach, community engagement, and we transferred money, we moved money from one place to another. To me, that is a given. My budget is before you right now. You will be adopting your budget on February 24th.
I understand. I wanted to get clarity on that piece. I also want to just stress one more thing. The focus on literacy, I think, is critical, and I applaud you for that. But I think we have to look at students who are really challenged in English, and some of those are local-born students who are challenged in English. And I really feel strongly that we've not addressed that part, their educational needs, to the extent that we should in this budget. And more work has to be done there. My question now is about how do you deal with that through Title III? If there could be under Eisenhower, or well, not Title III, but under the Eisenhower, one of the title programs, the Eisenhower, I guess it's Eisenhower II title, the programs that are designed to strengthen the teachers of these students who are challenged in not only English, but challenged also in mathematics. How are we using that money, and how is it reflected in the budget? How could I look to see, that, hey, this is being covered by Eisenhower money, or this is something special?
So I can talk to staff about how much, breaking it out by category of grant funding. I mean, we have funds that come through a number of the different titles. How we're able to break that out for you or not is something I'll have to defer to the budget office on. I would, however, say that when we use the word literacy, we're not excluding numeracy and other skills, because we believe that they need to be literate. They need to be able to compute, you know, as well. So, when we use the word literacy, it's for simplicity.
Okay.
It doesn't mean just to be able to read and write.
In the conversations, though, we've been around reading in English, so I want to hear the math. I saw that we've got several million in the non-restricted budget in math, and several million in the non-restricted budget for English. But I want to see what is being done. How do I see where this money is being used? I'm trying to just, you know, follow the money. And then I just want to reinforce what my colleague, Mr. Valentine, said, that the budget is really a value statement. And we want to convey in that budget that we have equitable funding for all of our students.
Dr. Anderson, I want you to hold that thought.
I'm done.
And we can do round 3 if you wish, unless you just was making a statement.
I just made a statement.
Okay, thank you. We have Mr. Valentine, and then in the queue we have Ms. Williams, and then Dr. Kaufman.
Thank you. I wanted to get a little more specific. Last week, we had a teacher leadership task force that I sit on, represent the school board, and talk about how we are doing our best to really empower our teachers to be great classroom teachers, but also give them opportunities outside of the classroom. What we agreed is that in many ways that's an investment in our system, because teachers who are involved in those programs are less likely to leave. If I would ask Lou Robinson how much it costs to recruit a teacher, I think Lou or Kim would say something around $50,000. And that $50,000 is whether they stay for 5 days or 5 years, right? And the longer they stay, the more we get out of that $50,000. So as we're talking about, this budget and looking at you bringing back to us something that better reflects where we need to go, I want to talk a little about investments and what parts of the budget you believe are investments wherein if we put money into these things, we will see cost savings in other areas. Another area would be pre-K, and that's sort of the catchphrase. $1 in pre-K is $7 saved over time, and students less likely to be in special education, less likely to stay back, et cetera, et cetera. So I think about pre-K, I think about professional development, I think about all the things that teachers are saying it takes for them to stay. Some of it's salaries, but again, if Lou would, he would say salaries is one, but it's not, the only thing. People are saying we need support. I want opportunities to grow. I want opportunities to lead. And when I'm in that room and I'm in other rooms around the county, and we're thinking about this budget, and we're saying, and we're going to be going back to folks saying, here is what we say is going to take us to move us forward. You're saying what we're cutting. We're saying that we want to invest in these areas, and this is going to get us there. So can you talk a little about the items that you believe are more investments that over time will save the system money?
So I think there's a number of them. I think you have all touched on some of those tonight. I think that we need to make sure that we're trying to improve our investments, both in specialty programs and in our neighborhood schools, if that's really the right term. I sort of hate to juxtapose them that way because, you look at Roosevelt and their STEM program. They also have, a neighborhood school. They have a boundary like all of the other schools. So we just have to be mindful of that. But I think that those investments in programs are important, but you can't really separate those out from people because people deliver programs. Those are sort of arguments that don't work well together. You don't deliver a math program without having math teachers, without having math supervisors, without having curriculum supervisors. But I think the school-based budgeting question and the double basic question and all those things are tied to our ongoing and long-term success. But there's also some, again, the question of short-term, long-term pieces that go on. I do think professional development is something that I've heard from the very, very, beginning of getting back here last year is a challenge. It's also an opportunity, and so we need to look at how we deliver it. Some of that may be moving to a more digital format. You know, we had that huge professional development last year in June in collaboration with PGCEA and Discovery, where we trained 9,000 people in a one-day training. But that can't be our only answer, is a one day here and a one day there. We've got to have a comprehensive way of providing professional development support. Some of that is job embedded, some of that is a different way, but time becomes the question. You know, it's always the fundamental question with professional development. And personally, I don't believe that we have enough days, and that is something that we have to work with our partners on. I don't think we have enough days to provide it. And because of that, we're driven to other kinds of conversations about how do you do it in a, you know, a job, more job embedded process. But also, part of that professional development is about the number of mentor teachers we have, the number of PAR teachers we have. They're all, you know, all of that is related together. It's one, you know, one big piece, but that's a huge piece. I do think we're behind where we should be on digital learning and digital literacy, and that component is really, really important to us. Certainly, you know, class sizes and salary enhancements, all of those kinds of things. But those two things play against each other. The more you pay people, unless your pot expands, you know, the amount of money that you have, the more you pay people, the less people you can afford, and the more people you hire, the less you can afford. You know, I mean, it's this conundrum that you get into. And so unless, again, the amount of revenue that you have is enhanced, then, you know, those two things tend to work against each other. But I'd say professional development, you know, salary, compensation, those kind of things. And in the professional development, again, there's a lot of pieces to that. Digital learning, and then some, you know, continued expansion of the programs that we have, both for the kids that we already have in our district and the ones that we want to keep here and the ones that we want to bring back here.
Ms. Williams?
Thank you. First, I want to say, I look at this budget as a tool that we're approving today or in the next coming weeks. And over the next year or so, we're going to be using this and following and monitoring our success. So when I looked at this budget, I looked at really the details that you as the experts provided us. And I appreciate all the work that you all have done so far. To finish up on the question that I was asking earlier, I think it might be simpler if you can provide an example of an agenda item that shows that kind of transfer that we're talking about, going from one fund source to another fund source. If you could provide in a follow-up document an example of a previous board item that shows that kind of transfer, then that would be sufficient. One thing that I kept seeing throughout the budget is an expenditure that talks about expenditure recovery. And I wasn't sure what that meant. In several places, in general, you have an expenditure recovery throughout the document. What does that mean, being that we're not in a real income generation type organization? How do we plan to recover an expenditure? In particular, I saw that in the printing area, and there are some areas throughout the budget that we talk about expenditure recovery. What does that mean?
And again, I'll provide the board with a detailed explanation of that, but that's not quite similar to the special revenue fund for food service, but that's a internal service fund where the cost for our printing operation is funded by dollars that are budgeted in the operating general fund. But I'll provide more detail on that in a comprehensive way to share with the board the difference between a special revenue fund and an internal service fund and how that's treated from a budgetary standpoint.
Yeah, if you would look at in the areas where you have that listed, I want to say it was printing and transportation and things like that. Where
yes,
you had,
that's essential garage.
Yeah.
There are a number of items in the internal service fund. It's no different than the health and dental fund, but with the health and dental fund, it's one lump sum amount that's being transferred to the health and dental fund from the general fund. But I'll provide that detail for the board.
Okay. In one area specifically, you have, this is under other fixed charges as well. I just have a quick question.
Ms. Williams, you want to save that for round 3?
We're going to have a round 3?
If you wish. If you
It's
wish.
just that I just want to have a quick question.
If it's
and
quick.
then we could,
Okay.
Okay. Quickly, on page 153, you have a savings of $17.7 million. In the past years, we've never spent that much. So I just want to know, how do you expect to save $17.7 million? And in the previous years, we've never spent that much. 153.
150 what?
That's the salary lapse that I talk about the first night when we presented an overview of the budget. Remember, we talked about that for this year in 16, we're going to recognize in the budget document the savings generated as a result of folks retiring, positions becoming vacant during the course of the year, positions taking longer to fill than possible. That generates a savings. We've had that savings every year, but we've not budgeted that. We always budget 100% of salaries.
So it's a cumulative amount that you're saying, or are you saying just for this year?
Just for that year. We based it upon the history of what our turnover savings has been. In the past, that was used to fund the majority of things that were done through the financial review process. And you recall the first work session, I said this year for the first time, I recommended, and Dr. Maxwell and the other executives accepted that recommendation to recognize an amount related to salary lapse as part of the budget process to free up those dollars to be used to fund initiatives in the budget, as opposed to funding the salaries at 100% of the requirement and then waiting for the savings to materialize and then going through the financial review process.
So I don't know, maybe I'm missing something, but if we have, you're saying that in 1 year, through salary lapses, you're going to save $17 million.
$35 million total.
No, just in this one category I'm talking about, in the fixed charges.
No, it's not going to be in that one category. That's
so
just
you're lumping all of
yes.
them in that one category.
Some of it, not all of it.
Would you provide where it's coming from specifically, like if it's coming from different departments and you're lumping it into that department?
It will vary. It will vary. I can't predict exactly where it's going to, that would vary from year to year, which cost center we would have the lapse in.
Okay.
So what we're going to do, that's our overall target. So when we manage the budget during the course of fiscal year 16, we will see how we're doing relative to reaching that aggregate total of $35 million.
So in previous years, you set aside $3, $4, $5 million.
In previous year, we didn't set aside anything. It was zero.
Well, now, in previous years, under the salary and wages category, you have set aside like $10 million. In the last few years, we've spent $3 million, and so that's where I'm trying to.
Those were stipends, Board Member Williams. This amount for the turnover expectancy is a negative number.
Okay, we'll talk offline.
Sure.
So, since I used.
So this goes back to touch on a number of the questions that were asked, but specifically around the double basic and the neighborhood schools investments. We talked about, Dr. Maxwell, you just talked about mentor teachers and professional development, and it seems like that is one area that we as a board may want to look at in terms of, we know that a lot of the newest teachers get assigned to some of the lowest performing schools. I'm not exactly sure what the numbers are in our case, but that tends to be a trend nationwide. That clearly getting those teachers off to a good start, if they're in those, if they have to be in those schools, is important. And we obviously are not at the level we want to be in terms of mentor teachers. And I know in your responses to our questions, you also mentioned some other teacher sort of development initiatives and the SAPAR program and others. So again, for those on the board who are really concerned about this issue, I think that's one area we may want to look at. How do we bolster our support for those teachers in those schools where a lot of these kids actually are? I think in your answers to our questions about the differential that Dr. Anderson and others brought up between the ELL students and double basic students, you did a good job of sort of laying out why English language learners are somewhat of a special case in that a lot of the funding for that comes and requirements come through sort of federal and state revenue streams that they bring in, and then there's requirements attached to that, and a lot of that has to do with the teachers who need to be employed who specifically have that ESOL experience, and then all the services that go along with that. Whereas some of the other factors we're looking at in terms of double basic or farms, those are factors, and they're being addressed across through a number of different programs and initiatives and categories, which is not necessarily to say that they're being addressed adequately, but that we have to look at some of these other areas that we need to make sure that we're addressing those kids' needs. Although some of those kids, I think, look at the numbers you sent us, about 1/7 of them are actually ELL students, so they're also getting some support through that, through that stream. One of the other areas I wanted to address briefly was in one of your answers to our questions about reading recovery. You mentioned that about 1,000 kids in previous years had been brought to grade level. I guess that's focusing on the first grade level, had been pulled up through intervention at that area. We've now, because of funding issues, we've moved, and also because we're trying to focus our efforts on those schools that are in most need, we've moved to really focusing those, freezing that number of positions, those reading recovery positions, if that's what we still call them, and focusing on those 25 schools, right? So if I know some of those schools are probably some of the same schools where we have a lot of the double basic kids, but there's probably a lot of other schools where you have those kids who are not necessarily receiving that attention. So is that another area then that maybe we should be looking at in terms of reading recovery? Because from how you're describing it here, it's actually a pretty effective way of addressing the literacy issues. So if you can just address your choice and decision to sort of focus the area in those schools, and whether that's something that we maybe want to go back to expanding out to the other schools as well.
Yeah, I think it's best if we go ahead and get our curriculum people to respond to that question and submit it to the board. But I think that there are a couple reasons why you do that. First of all, under the federal and state guidelines, we have certain schools that are identified as focus schools, for example, and we're required to provide certain services in those schools. And so, but speaking specifically to decisions about reading recovery, I'll let my curriculum people respond to that question more fully. I'm sure we captured it.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to respond that the explanation regarding the discrepancy in the amount spent per student in ELL and double basic is not satisfactory to me. I understand, but I would like to know more about restricted funds versus non-restricted funds. From the information that I could get from the appendices of the budget, it seems that most of the money that's given under a title, and I can't get to the total amount given under that title, but most of the money given under that title is unrestricted. And since we know that schools get extra money based upon the number of ELL learners in that school, that there would be a pretty large price tag on how much money is actually given to the schools. I think it's very important to have these services and this educational experience for ELL learners. That's not a part of what I'm wanting to convey tonight. It's just that I think that we don't have comparable ones for the double basics and students in other categories. And I believe that we should have equitable funding to the extent that we can. Understanding that sometimes you'll get more than I, and sometimes I'll get more than you. But it shouldn't be 5.5 times more unless there's a real good explanation for that. And I haven't heard it yet. It probably is out there, but I haven't heard it yet.
So seeing no more lights, I assume that we're finished with comment. Again, I want to thank you for participating in our budget work session for the FY 2015 proposed operating budget. The Board of Education will adopt this budget at our next board meeting scheduled for February the 24th, 2015 at 7 p.m. The February 10th, 2015 FY 2016 operating budget work session is adjourned at 6:45 p.m. Thank you.
Thank
We
you,
will
Amy.
see you in about 15 minutes. We'll take a little short break and we'll be back. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Ooh, now plenty loud. The Board of Education is convened this evening for the sole purpose of receiving public commentary on the fiscal year 2016 budget. The CEO's proposed budget recommendation of $1.839 billion represents a 2.5% increase over the fiscal year 2015 approved budget of $1.795 billion. Openness, transparency, and inclusiveness are essential to the work we do. We significantly value your voice, the voice of our parents and our community members in this process. Our district can't begin this work of building a sustainable, fair, and comprehensive budget without you in the process. So your presence tonight is critical, and your voice will be heard. It's worth mentioning before I move on. Well, let me say this first. Obviously, all of the details of the budget are online. You get information at pgcps.org. We are scheduled to adopt the budget at our February 24th, 2014 board meeting that begins at 7:05 p.m. At that time, the recommended budget will be forwarded to the county executive, Mr. Asheron Baker, who will develop his proposed county budget and present it to the county council in March 2015. The county council must then adopt a budget which includes school system funding designated by category, and then it goes to the state legislature in April 2015. Once that process is done, the Board of Education will then reconcile with the county-approved budget, and we will approve. It will be adopted at a regularly scheduled meeting in June 2015. I tell you all that to tell you we are not the only ones who need to hear your voices. Once you've finished with us, go talk to the county council. Go talk to the county executive. Most significantly, call your members of the delegation in Annapolis and tell them how important it is to fund schools at an adequate level. So please do remember to do that. We will begin public comment. It's worth pointing out, the other thing I'll point out, we know from experience and from what we've seen that a number of folks are very concerned about the conditions of schools and school buildings. I want to talk about things like building a new school. I would remind you there are two parts of that process that are important for you to consider. We approve our CIP, or Capital Improvement Program, in September of each year. So it's important for us to hear your voices at that time. So the kind of the list of schools who are going to be focusing on to repair has already been approved. That process happened in September, so we want to hear from you next September as we revisit that again. But of course, in this budget, we have about 35% of our operating budget is focused on school improvement and school facilities, and so we want to hear from you about that. So we're going to start. We have 29 registered speakers, so we're going to have this process moving nice and quick. I will call you up. You will have 3 minutes. When you complete your 3 minutes, you will hear the buzzer. You will complete your last sentence only. Some of you use a lot of commas in your last sentence. Tonight, we're going to ask you to restrict those commas and kind of get right to the point. Please do leave a copy of your testimony to the fine young lady next to the podium, so that we have that for us. And at that, we will begin with James Wallace IV, a student at Judith P. Hoyer Montessori.
Good afternoon.
We're going to make sure, is that mic turned on?
Hello, my name is James Wallace the fourth, and I am a 5th grader at Judith P. Hoyer Montessori School. First, I would like to thank the board members for expanding Judith P. Hoyer to include a middle school. We are so glad we finally have a middle school, with lockers included. However, I would like to oppose Governor Larry Hogan's idea to cut the Prince George's County Public Schools budget. If he cuts the budget, does he realize what will happen to the morale of us kids? There will be no media, physical education, art, and no music whatsoever. All work and no play? What kind of deal is that, Governor Hogan? According to Music Education Online, the United States Department of Education recommends that arts to college bound middle and junior high students, asserting many colleges view participation in arts and music as valuable experience to broaden students' understanding and appreciation of the world around them. Every student benefits from classes like media, PE, art, and music. In closing, I understand how difficult it is to balance and maintain a budget. I find it difficult at times to maintain my own allowance budget. I would like to appeal to every board member to continue your efforts in generating a budget that enables students to have a well-rounded education that includes media, PE, art, and music. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wallace. When you're ready, you can come on up and run the meeting. I think he's ready. Next up is Miles Hanson, student, Judith P. Montessori.
Good evening, Board of Education members. My name is Miles Hanson, and I am here tonight to ask for your continued support for my school, Judith P. Hoyer Montessori. I am in the first class of the middle school. This is the first year we have had a middle school thanks to your support and the support of Dr. Maxwell. I am really enjoying being in middle school. This year we get to switch classes, have different teachers for different subjects, and we even have lockers. But maybe more importantly, we are studying about numerical and algebraic expressions in math. We are analyzing authors' writing styles and tone in English language arts. We are learning about earthquakes and plate tectonics in science. And we have studied landmarks and monuments of Washington, D.C. in social studies. In a Montessori school, we have the chance to work in small groups and discuss the things we are learning about. We get to work individually and in small groups. This is important because in the real world you need to know how to work by yourself and as part of the team. Overall, Hoyer is a great learning environment with great teachers and staff. I hope you will continue to support the growth of Judith P. Hoyer Montessori and especially its middle school program. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Our next speaker is Jocelyn Moreno, student at Buck Lodge Middle School.
Jocelyn's gonna need an interpreter, so quickly, we're gonna do it.
Buenas noches, miembros de la Junta Educativa, Presidente E.U. Banks y Superintendente Maxwell. Mi nombre es Jocelyn Moreno y soy estudiante
Good evening, members of the school board, President Chairman Eubanks, and Superintendent Maxwell. My name is Jocelyn Moreno, and I am a student.
De octavo grado en Backlash Middle School.
I'm a 8th grader at Backlash Middle School.
Soy de El Salvador y vine a este país hace 9 meses.
I am from El Salvador, but I came to this country 9 months ago.
Yo tuve la oportunidad de venir a este país con mi mamá y después llegaron mi hermano y mi papá.
I had the opportunity to come here with my mom and then my brother and father.
Aún así, ha sido difícil la transición a este país.
Even so, the transition has been difficult.
Pero afortunadamente he aprendido más inglés y avanzado mucho más rápido de lo que me imaginé.
Fortunately, I have learned more English and advanced much more quickly than I had imagined.
Me siento más cómoda, todavía solamente hablando en español, pero poco a poco me siento más cómoda en inglés.
I feel more comfortable still speaking in Spanish, but slowly I am feeling more comfortable in English.
Mi maestro de reading ha sido el que más nos ha ayudado en clase.
My reading teacher has been the one who has helped us the most in class.
Él busca traductor, hace muecas para hacernos entender.
He looks for a translator or makes gestures to help us understand.
Pero no es así en todas mis clases. Tengo que esforzarme para entender lo que pasa en las clases.
It's not like that in all classes. I have to force myself to understand what's happening in classes.
Y también entender cómo sobresalir en este nuevo ambiente.
And also how to succeed in this new environment.
Las nuevas escuelas internacionales serán algo positivo para nuestra comunidad.
The new international schools will be something positive for our community.
Ya que tendremos más oportunidades para aprender más inglés.
Because we will get more opportunities to learn more English.
Y poder alcanzar nuestras metas.
And be able to reach our goals.
Yo quiero ser doctora.
I want to be a doctor.
Además, las escuelas en Langley Park motivarán a muchos estudiantes.
Also, the school in Langley Park will motivate more students
a quedarse en la escuela, ya que sé que no todos los estudiantes tienen la misma experiencia.
Because I know that to stay in school, because I know that not all the students have the same experience that I have.
Y dejan la escuela por no sentirse cómodos en la escuela o no tener quien se interese por ellos.
Because they don't feel comfortable in school, or they don't have someone who takes an interest in them.
Gracias por su tiempo y gracias por darnos otras oportunidades para salir adelante.
Thank you for your time and thank you for giving us other opportunities to succeed.
Thank you, Ms. Moreno. Our next speaker is Sarahi Rivera, student at Buck Lodge Middle School.
Buenas noches, miembro de la Junta Educativa, presidente Eubanks y superintendente Maxwell.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education, President Eubanks and Superintendent Maxwell.
Mi nombre es Saraí Rivera y soy estudiante de octavo grado en Buckland Middle School.
My name is Saraí Rivera and I'm a student of 8th grade in Buck Lodge Middle School.
Soy de El Salvador y vine a Estados Unidos hace un año.
I'm from El Salvador and I came to the United States a year ago.
Fue difícil mi transición ya que no había visto a mi madre por casi 11 años.
I passed a difficult transition because I hadn't seen my mom for 11 years.
Y tuvimos algunos problemas por esa razón. Ahora vivo con mi hermana mayor.
And we had a few problems from the situation and now I live with my older sister.
Y realmente a veces me siento mejor estando en la escuela porque mi mamá pasa más tiempo trabajando que en la casa.
I feel better in school because my mom passes more time at work than at home.
Todo aquí es diferente.
A lot of things here are different.
Aquí tenemos que tomar el bus y en la forma en que te enseñan, pero me siento bien.
every day I have to take the bus, and there's different ways where that they teach you, but I feel okay.
Tengo un maestro que nos ayuda a entender el material que presenta en las clases.
I have a teacher that helps me understand the material that he presents during class.
Mi clase favorita es ciencia porque me interesa el material.
And my favorite class is science.
Y porque en esa me esfuerzo más en clases.
And because I do better in this class.
Aunque a veces los estudiantes nacidos en Estados Unidos nos hacen burlas.
Even though students that are born here sometimes make fun of us.
Porque no hablamos bien el inglés y eso a mí no me importa.
And because we don't speak English well, but that I really don't care about that.
Yo sigo adelante porque yo quiero llegar a ser una ginecóloga o una abogada para inmigrantes.
Because I want to be in the future a gynecologist or an attorney to help immigrants.
Para poder ayudar a otras personas como yo a salir adelante.
To be able to help other people like myself to be able to move forward.
Me emociona saber que vienen una escuela para estudiantes como yo donde vamos a tener más oportunidades para participar más actividades en escuelas y seguir alcanzando nuestras metas.
And I'm extremely happy to know that there's going to be schools made for, especially for us, where we're going to have more opportunities to participate more actively in school.
Gracias por su tiempo.
And be able to achieve our goals. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Rivera. Our next speaker is Jean-Claude Safari, a student at High Point High School.
Good evening, members of board, CEO Maxwell, and audience members. My name is Jean-Claude Safari. I'm a senior at High Point High School and came to the United States from Congo about 2.5 years ago. I have had a good experience so far at High Point. I've learned English pretty well. But my first day at High Point, I didn't like it. I did not speak English and I did not understand what was going on. Slowly, I began to understand more and more. Some of teachers encouraged me to stay after school and participate in programs to learn more English. The program only had 10 more students. I earned a certificate for participating in the program and learn more English. That first year, I did not participate in much, not even soccer. I did not understand the announcement on sports and activities because they were all given in English. This year, I understood more and was able to join the soccer team and participate in other programs like Liberty Promise, which gives me information on American life and scholarships to attend college. My teachers have encouraged me to integrate into school, but I know that sometimes I rely on other French speakers to be able to understand what is going in school or classes like math, science. My teachers at High Point have been very surprised, but I know that there are only so many students they can help. I am excited to hear that Prince George County Public School with Casa de Maryland will be developing 2 new schools to help more students like me understand how school works and how to be involved in their school. I know these schools will make an even great impact and will help all ESOL students in the county in the future. Thank you for thinking of us ESOL students and giving us more opportunities to be successful.
Thank you, Mr. Safari. Our next speaker is Chambridge Worrell Smith, a student at Phyllis E. Williams Elementary School. We got our... Hold on, wait a sec. We got something for you. Okay. We're going to take care of this.
Buenas noches, me llamo Cambridge Worrell Smith. Gracias por el programa de Imagine en español a Phyllis E. Williams. Mucho gusto.
The translation is, good evening, my name is Cambridge Worrell Smith. Thank you for the Spanish Immersion Program at Phyllis E. Williams. I like it a lot. Thank you.
But she failed to mention that she's in the kindergarten, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you, Ms. Worrell Smith. Our next speaker is Devon Riley, teacher, Oxon Hill Elementary School. Are you? That's not you? Oh, okay. I was wondering why you were taking a long route. Is Devon Riley here? Okay. All right, thank you. Next speaker. Next speaker is Courtney Lasan, parent at Winship Wheatley Early Childhood Center.
Hello. And the way.
Read it. My.
He did. Oh, he did. Oh, he did do it. Oh, he did.
Tristan.
Joe there he is. My daughter's way.
Say hello.
Hello. My doing
is.
OED is. Oh, there. Oh, there.
Tristan.
And there, like you.
Shoe fly.
I reckon this is an shoe fly is all of me. I feel. And it is ice cream cone. I feel what the ice cream cone. I feel what the home went. I feel what the football star. I feel what the hula hoop. I feel what is swimming pool. I feel what the skateboard. I feel what the trampoline. And I feel what the one BTD. Did you dare tell me?
All finished.
All finished.
Thank you.
Excuse me while I grab a tissue for Miss Boston.
Yeah.
There you go. There you go. Thank you. Our next speaker is David Yarborough, teacher, Eleanor Roosevelt High School.
Good evening. This is the way we'll trip over that. Okay. My name is David Yarborough. I'm the string specialist and orchestra teacher at Eleanor Roosevelt High School. And I'm just here to comment about arts education. And my hope is that I'm preaching to the choir and that you all feel the way I do about arts education. We've all read the studies. We all know how important arts education is. And the studies are not new. They're studies going back 20 and 30 years at this point concerning the importance of arts education. Arts education not only helps the smart students, it also helps the average students and the not so average students. And there are many students who comment about how if it hadn't been for the arts in their schools, troubled kids, they would have never gotten through primary and secondary school education. They wouldn't have gone through those difficult teenage times to be successful and go on to college. Arts education is really about human development, and our tools for human development are the instruments, the ensembles, the choirs, the arts rooms, and the drama rooms. We're getting students to get in touch with their heart, their soul. They're learning teamwork. They're learning problem-solving skills, which goes over into their academic success. They're learning how to be constructively self-critical. They're learning life skills. The arts are really the only formal education in terms of aesthetics. It's the only formal study of that. And it's these skills, the human development, and the personal achievements that make the arts so important as part of a basic education. In this present time, when test scores are being so highly scrutinized and examined under a microscope, and schools are really being held accountable, it is not logical to consider cutting funding for the arts. All studies clearly point out that schools that are culturally rich have students who score well. I'm fortunate to have been through my primary and secondary education in schools that were culturally rich, as I'm sure many of you were able to attend schools that had a lot of cultural offerings. I think we really need to make sure that all schools in PG County are culturally rich across the board, and that all of our children have the same opportunities that many of us have. I think it would be highly regressive at this time to cut arts education. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yarborough. Our next speaker is Monica Levine, a teacher at Francis Fuchs Early Childhood Center.
My name is Monica Levin, a nationally board-certified music teacher and a board-certified music therapist. I've taught music to children with special needs for 28 years. Donna Lauerhaus and I stood before you last year, and our purpose continues: ensure access, equity, and equality of music instruction for all children. Gains have been made, but comprehension of the scope of this issue is not fully grasped. Some still don't have access to the benefits of music. Staffing is incredulously random and haphazard. Until recently, I was responsible for 13 CRI and CSEP classes at Highbridge with a 0.5 staffing. Now it's full-time with 12 classes, but based on what criteria? And is the same criteria used in other schools? Chapel Forge has 0.5 music for 34 classes. Wheatley, 54 classes with 2 teachers. Fuchs, 54 classes and 1 teacher with a greater number of students. We must establish staffing criteria and close this gap. Does HR, music, or the special ed department really understand this complex issue? Who's taking ownership to advocate for the equity of music services? A developmentally appropriate music class for my children looks very different than a traditional music class. My door is always open, and I invite you to come and see for yourself. Given the chatter of budget cuts and funds from the GCEI in question, please consider the cost effectiveness of music. PGCPS Arts Integration Officer John Shahini says, arts allows students with diverse learning styles to access the curriculum, and whether they are visual, kinesthetic, or auditory learners, the arts provides effective instructional strategies. This is especially true for these students with special needs. Music supports our systemic focus of literacy, as well as math, communication, social-emotional, and motor skills. I invite you to come and see my kids as they read lyrics, follow picture cues, count, sort instruments, create patterns and movements. Music can uniquely address music standards concurrently with these classroom objectives and IEP needs. You must conclude that music is clearly a valuable resource worth expanding. Please don't exacerbate these inequities by considering just me and the ones here before you. We're here as a collective voice for those who can't speak, for those who don't have access to transportation, have a language barrier, or might be at home tending to the physical care of their child. As difficult fiscal decisions are made, you must consider this population. They need our voice, they need your support, and they matter. A mother shares, Haley is nonverbal, but when she hears music, I know by her expressions that she understands. Mom details examples of her daughter's positive responses to music and concludes with a request that special needs children have the opportunity to learn with the tools that help them best. Find Haley's letter, additional parent perspectives, and supporting artifacts with my enclosures. Dr. Eubanks, words you spoke last year still remain with me. You asked for us to be leaders, you asked for our voice in developing policy, and assured us we would have your support. Please lead this charge and ensure that these students are not forgotten. On behalf of all the special children whom I serve, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Levine. Our next speaker is Donna Lauerhaus, teacher at H. Winship Wheatley Early Childhood Center.
Good evening. My name is Donna Lauerhaus. I've taught music special education in Prince George's County Public Schools for 13 years at Wheatley Early Childhood Center, Jessie B. Mason Regional School, and Panorama Elementary in its regional program. I am dually National Board certified in early middle childhood music and as an exceptional needs specialist. This is the third time I have spoken to the board regarding the inequity of music services for children with exceptionalities in our district. I want to thank Dr. Maxwell for the additional positions given to the music department this year to address this. Our purpose tonight is to ensure that these positions remain in place and that music staffing is adequate to meet the needs of all students in our district. Despite the issuance of additional music positions, there are still students in this district who do not receive music services through the music department. Students in the parent-infant program for young deaf and hard of hearing children at Thomas Claggett Elementary, some early childhood special education students at James Ryder Randall Elementary, and students with significant needs formerly served at Jessie B. Mason Regional School, now attending Panorama Elementary and Surrattsville High. These students don't receive any services through the music department, not from a highly qualified teacher or even from a substitute teacher. Although we are making steps toward remedying this problem, I hear all the time that there are more students with exceptionalities in our district who don't have music as often as their regular education peers. Some music teachers are afraid of throwing their administrator under the bus and will not openly admit that there is an issue with unserved or underserved children with exceptionalities in regard to music services. Even when music is provided, it is often not in a developmentally appropriate way for students who require significant supports due to the self-admitted lack of specialized training by general education music teachers. Last year, I submitted documentation to the board detailing that in regards to music education services, the rights of these students with special needs are being violated according to provisions of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, the Code of Maryland Regulations, and the PGCPS Vocal General Music Policy, which states all students in pre-kindergarten through 5th, including students in self-contained and wing special education classes, receive 5 periods of music instruction every 2 weeks. The special education department won't fund these positions because music is not on students' IEPs, and the current student-based budgeting formula is inappropriate for addressing the needs of students in pre-kindergarten and special education programs regarding music. I ask, what is the Board of Education going to do to fix this?
Thank you, Ms. Lauerhaus. Our next speaker is Lynette Trusk from H. Winship Wheatley Early Childhood Center.
Good evening, Board of Education and Dr. Maxwell. I'm Lynette Trusky, and I've worked as a choral general music educator in Prince George's County for 22 years. I am also a licensed Music Together teacher, which is an early childhood music program designed for children from birth to age 4 and their parents or caregivers. It is due to my experience working with very young children that I was asked to join the music staff at H. Winship Wheatley Early Childhood Center. It was also due to your vision that provided additional music positions for our special needs schools. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. It is still needed, your support. The need for a music special education co-taught classroom was the vision of Donna Lauerhaus and other music educators in our county who have had difficulty adequately serving the needs of our students with exceptionalities. Music educators receive very little training regarding educating students with special needs. It is this lack of training that has kept our school system from being able to fill all of our music education positions for special education. I believe this is a temporary problem. At Wheatley, every classroom is staffed with a special educator and a regular educator, and these two professionals work together to provide the highest quality of care and instruction to our youngest students and their families. I believe that Wheatley may be the only school in the entire state of Maryland that has a music special educator and a music regular educator. We are working together at Wheatley, and this arrangement has allowed us to gain the knowledge. For me, I was the regular educator, and I needed the support that Donna Lauerhaus could provide in special education to adequately meet the unique needs of our special needs kids. The training is desperately needed in our county, this kind of training, and in our state and across the country, and your support and vision has the potential to impact the education of all of our students that need it the most, including Tristan, who got up here with the fly swatter. He was performing for you a lesson we did last week for Black History Month, where we taught the children to sing "Shoo Fly, Don't Bother Me." And then the children rewrote the lyrics to I feel like, and they got to fill in the blank and draw a picture. And Tristan loves that song. And you heard him excited to see himself on the screen, but he was never as clear as when he was reading from that book. He comes to music, he opens up, he lights up, and he speaks. That's what music does.
Thank you, Ms. Trusk. Our next speaker is Michelle Nixon, teacher at H. Winship Wheatley Early Childhood Center.
I will be speaking as a parent today. My name is Michelle Nixon, and my daughter Michaela attended Winship Wheatley Early Childhood Center and now is a part of the Bradbury Heights family. I can attest personally that the music is beneficial to children with intellectual disabilities and other special needs. On a personal level, everything becomes the song in my life. The Buzz Buzz song by Lloyd Berkner and also You Are My Sunshine have been miracle workers over the past 7 years. Just by hearing either song, my daughter would instantly break out and dance. It didn't matter where she was. Whether it was physical therapy or in music class at Wheatley. As soon as she would hear the Buzz Buzz song, she would run and find any object to use as a scarf to dance with. Just last school year, I received a call stating my daughter got injured at PE. So rushing to the emergency room, which was a long 10-minute drive, I arrived to see my 7-year-old whom was diagnosed with a mild concussion that day, singing You Are My Sunshine with the hospital staff. I was told by her teacher she requested everyone to join in. These are just a few examples of how music has personally impacted the lives of myself as well as my daughter. It provides a testament in which this powerful tool has the potential to influence the everyday lives of many children. So in conclusion, music encourages all students to have fun despite their diagnosis or disability. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Nixon. Our next speaker is Dr. Jacqueline Brown from the Prince George's African American Museum and Cultural Center.
Good evening, honorable board members. I'm Dr. Jacqueline Brown, Executive Director of the Prince George's African American Museum and Cultural Center at North Brentwood. And with me this evening to split the speech, to keep within the 3 minutes, is our Director of Art Education for the museum, Ms. Chanel Compton. Honorable members of the Board of Education, we are here this evening to support the Arts Integration Program of the Prince George's County Public Schools. From 2011 to 2013, our museum served over 500 students in 27 Prince George's County public schools throughout the county. The Arts and African American History and Culture programs of the museum have the following goals for the students that we serve. We use our programs to develop the ability to utilize creative, artistic, and innovative methods to do the following: improve academic achievement, develop socialization and leadership skills, enhance self-esteem, build healthy personal and community relationships, identify and target sound career objectives, and achieve future aspirations. Teaching in and through the arts has been proven to improve student engagement and to result in promoting and positively impacting communication skills, critical thinking skills, problem-solving skills, and collaborative skills. Because our museum programs combine the arts with cultural experiences and information, there is also a positive impact on cross-cultural understanding and communication, as one of our parents knows. We also have the honor of doing some other things.
Through the partnership with Prince George's County Public Schools, our museum has had the honor and pleasure of working with this academic year with the 15 integrated arts cluster schools. We have served 1,240 students so far this year. Our Cultural Education Passport program includes Early Keepers, our early childhood program which promotes the arts, community awareness, and self-esteem. Museum in a Box, where students engage in in-class museum presentations. We also have middle school public arts after-school programs, and of course, our award-winning Culture Keepers high school after-school programs, where high school students research African American history and cultures throughout the diaspora, and produce public art that impacts community change. Some teacher comments are shared in this testimony. They are attached to this written testimony.
It has indeed been a joy to see the engaged scholars that emerge from experiencing the Integrated Arts Program in Prince George's County Public Schools. We are honored to be a part of such a groundbreaking and innovative approach to education in our county. Please continue to support and expand the Integrated Arts Program in the Prince George's County Public School System, and please visit the Prince George's African American Museum and Cultural Center, 4519 Rhode Island Avenue, in the heart of the Gateway Arts District. And when you come, you will be greeted with what we always do: welcome home.
Thank you both very much. Yes, be sure to visit. Our next speaker is Robin Ernest Esquire, parent, Greenbelt Middle School. Is Robin Ernest here? Robin Ernest, going once, going twice. Okay, how about Candace Ali from Wise High School?
Hello, how are you?
Hello.
I didn't bring my notes, but I have an outline, so I don't have anything to give. But my concern was for the budget that there's nothing in the proposal that mentions anything about distribution of laptops or Chromebooks to the high school students. So I know that from what I'm hearing more about these budget cuts, I'm hoping there's a way, instead of cutting, to adjust. The only reason why I say this is because I noticed I have a high school student in 10th grade and at Wise High School, and in the last couple of years I've noticed the curriculum included like Edmodo and Remind Me Now and Spanish English Dictionary and things that she had to have online access. There was a time when we didn't have access to a laptop, so my daughter was doing her homework on her cell phone. And I don't think that's appropriate for our county to have the students using their own cell phones for the curriculum, the required curriculum. Recently I got an email from one of the teachers on Edmodo suggesting that the students stop using cell phones in class as a distraction, because the students are not using their cell phone for the curriculum. They're using it to do their own social media. Even though they've lifted the cell phone use, it's still not the place for cell phone use, the classrooms and the classroom environment. I did a little research and I looked at that 358-page budget, and which is why I don't have my notes today. I kind of was trying to see if I can find something in there that said distribution of laptops. And I realized that there was about a $3 million refresh textbook budget. And I'm thinking, why are we doing a refresh of textbooks when we have online books? We have for the last 4 years, we've actually refreshed some of these laptops that are in storage. So I'm kind of confused here about how this budget is being used. I believe in my heart there's a way that Prince George's County can adjust to make these tools accessible for students. I also thought back to, like, if somebody was homeless. We have a large homeless population. And if you think of somebody like this, libraries are not open 24 hours. McDonald's is open 24 hours. If you get a student with a laptop, a Chromebook, which is about $271 or $300, 35,000 students, high school students in the Prince George's County area. If you give each one of those students, it'll cost us about $10 million. So divide that in 3. You get 3 years at least to satisfy that budget difference. But if you have a homeless student and the libraries are open only 2 late days out of the week, the student can take their laptop into McDonald's and meet the curriculum. And I look at it from that standpoint, and I'm asking that the Prince George's County School really look at the adjustment of this budget to satisfy these students that are really walking into the world needing to compete and needing that electronic device, not a cell phone. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ali. The next speaker is Lauren Cummings, parent, Greenbelt Middle School.
Actually, that's a typo. I'm here with Greenbelt Elementary School. So.
Greenbelt Elementary School, that's even better.
Okay. Members of the school board and distinguished guests, my name is Lauren Cummings. I'm a parent of a 4th and 5th grader at Greenbelt Elementary School. I've watched for the past few years as our school continues to scrape by with minimal funding, while other schools around us buy iPads with Title I money. I asked the school board to more thoroughly consider how schools like ours are being affected by funding cuts. The budget Greenbelt Elementary School received this year allowed us to purchase what should be considered an adequate level of staff, but then left us a paltry $33,000 for discretionary items. As I understand it, this amount has now not only been frozen, but actually cut in half. The $33,000 equates to $53 for each student for the entire school year. That amounts to 29 cents a day per student. Let me say that again, 29 cents a day per student in discretionary funds. This discretionary money is supposed to cover supplies, substitute teachers, equipment like headphones, which are now required for the park test, and the list goes on. When you all are on business travel, you're reimbursed more per mile than our kids get in discretionary funding for an entire day. In fact, you're reimbursed double their amount. I don't believe that schools should have to lessen adequate staffing levels in order to buy paper, and I don't believe substitute teachers are discretionary. Federal guidelines for 2015 state that a family of 5 making less than $28,410 is in poverty. The amount of money Greenbelt receives is forcing our school to educate 621 children on an annual discretionary budget almost equivalent to the federal poverty level. If a family of 5 can barely eat, put a roof over their head, and buy necessary items, how can an elementary school be expected to successfully educate 621 students on roughly the same amount? I ask that you thoughtfully consider how budget cuts are adversely affecting schools like Greenbelt Elementary School. As a taxpayer and a parent, I implore you to find other ways to cut the budget rather than continue to make our children struggle to have equal access to educational attainment. Additionally, and like many others, I'd like to speak in support of music education in our schools, but specifically instrumental music. Our youngest started the trumpet this year. Our oldest, who's on the autism spectrum, is thriving on the viola. The studies are clear. Music education improves cognitive development, math and reading skills, fosters the ability to work on a team, and develops critical thinking and leadership skills. I ask that you continue to fund this valuable program so that all students have access to the opportunities that music education provides. Additionally, I'd like to applaud Principal Gaines and her staff for being able to accomplish all that they have given their extremely limited resources. I hope you all will find other methods for reducing costs to our school system rather than taking funds away from our children. They deserve more. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Cummings. Our next speaker is Lakeisha Adekoya. Is Lakeisha Adekoya here this evening? Is Renee Paxton, parent, Suitland High School, here this evening?
Good evening, Board and Dr. Maxwell. My name is Renee Paxton. I am the mother of a junior at Suitland High School and a proud member of its PTSA. I come before you to speak on behalf of the PTSA. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge 3 board members that are partners and friends of Suitland High School: Len Monday, Curtis Valentine, and Dr. Eubanks. I am here to speak to you about 2 issues. One, the continuing need for a new Suitland High School. And we do understand that this hearing is about the operating budget, but the PTSA wanted to be on record for making this request. And 2, to ensure that the music and arts budget at Suitland and throughout the county does not suffer drastic cuts from the budget. We understand and appreciate the difficulty you have in determining budgets and capital improvements in such a large school system. There are many schools and many needs that you must balance in order to ensure that students are able to learn and teachers are able to teach. Suitland High School is a beacon in the community, situated near several federal government facilities and close to the nation's capital. The school is where many young people from the community come to make their lives and communities better. Despite its challenges, as any school has, and the fact that it sits in a Transforming Neighborhoods Initiative community. The school brings in eager freshmen and 4 years later turns them into incoming college freshmen, new military recruits, artists, barbers, auto mechanics, and good citizens. However, Suitland High School was built in 1951. In the last several years, new schools have been built, high schools have been built in the county, including Oxon Hill, Wise, Flowers, and now Fairmont Heights. Now it's our turn. Our students and community deserve a new Suitland High School, not a facility that was built when Harry S. Truman was our president. I would like to finish up by encouraging you to ensure that the music and arts related budget in the county gets cut as little as possible, as some of the speakers have indicated. I'm sure that you have all seen studies showing the correlation between an arts education and student learning and achievement. But we at Suitland High School are keenly aware of this because we house the county's finest art program, the Center for Visual and Performing Arts, CVPA. You can clap. We have seen how arts education gives our children focus and makes them more determined to succeed. Again, we understand the difficulty budgetary times require difficult decisions, but we have to remember that we are here for our children. They are our greatest treasure and our future. Let's not take away a valuable tool to their success. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Paxson, and what a brilliant use of commas there. Just excellent. Our next speaker is Amy Kallner, a parent at Greenbelt, either middle or elementary school. Which one? Or is she here? Amy Kallner. No, Amy, okay. Jeff Rupert, parent Benjamin Falloy. Is Mr. Rupert here? All right, moving right along. Mike Terborg. Is Mike Terborg here?
Good evening. I last spoke before you in 2013. At the time, our school libraries were receiving just over $2 per student per year for library materials. Now, I thank you for increasing that to just over right around $4 per student per year. My 1,400 plus students, elementary school students, appreciate the soccer books, the science books, and other pleasure reading materials I've obtained with these funds. Your teacher librarians are in a key position to support your literacy efforts. I noticed earlier, Dr. Anderson, you had asked what's in place for literacy. Well, we have libraries in each of our districts, in each of our schools, that can support and partner with your teachers and our teachers. We're doing that currently, but we need your support. For library materials for my students, I support over 8 grades, from pre-K to 8. My early language learners, my English language learners, my high-functioning students, my special needs students, my visual impaired students. I need materials for each of these to be comfortable in the library. Each one needs to have access and a welcoming environment. Otherwise, the foundation that we're so critically trying to develop won't be successful. We need our students to have opportunities to be great by choice. Well, we need to provide them this. I have currently had at one school $1,600 to buy books. The average age of the collection is from just about 1999, before these students were even thought of. Current research shows that students, if they're not reading by grade level by about 3rd grade, are 4 times less likely to graduate from high school. That seems to indicate to me that we need a push, student-based budgeting aside, for our libraries. If we're really truly going to make a difference, whether it's the digital literacy initiatives that our librarians are trained in to support, Our traditional literacy initiatives, we need these materials to compete with everything else our students are trying to do. They're coming. I circulate about 50% nonfiction text to my students, which is suggesting to me that these kids can meet Common Core requirements and initiatives if they have the materials. We compete. I'm asking that the per student library materials rate be increased by $4 per year until it reaches the average cost of a book, which is about $21 due to copyright fees and other things. I realize it will take time, and I do understand the needs and the balancing the budgets, but every child, if they have access to the library, can use these materials. Unlike a classroom library, I provide things for every age at their levels. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Mr. Terborg. Our next speaker is Renetta Stanley, Executive Director of Loud Voices Together, Educational Advocacy Group. Is Ms. Stanley here? Ms. Stanley. Oh, okay. Is Melinda Jackson, parent Benjamin Floyd?
Good evening, Dr. Maxwell, Dr. Eubanks, members of the board. I'm Melinda Jackson, and I'm here tonight as the parent of 4 children who each had the opportunity to attend performing arts at schools in this county. My 2 oldest children were privileged to attend Thomas Pullen, while my 2 younger children currently attend Benjamin D. Floyd. As a parent, I can tell you how my daughter, who graduated from Dr. Henry A. Wise Junior High School in 2014, went from being an average elementary school student to studying under one of the county's best keyboard teachers, to maintaining a 4.0 GPA for 2 years straight, and left Pullen the recipient of the Superintendent's Award. This same once academically average student, I went on to graduate from high school with a 3.6 GPA, again the recipient of the CEO Award, and in receipt of a $4,000 musical scholarship from Spelman College, and completed her first semester with a 3.2 GPA. I can also tell you of my oldest son, who was also a keyboard student at Pullen and plays some piano, but yet has become one of the best bass guitar players that I know. As a result, he is currently working with one of the county chorus teachers as they prepare for their upcoming CD recording. I can also tell you about my 14-year-old, who is a percussionist at heart, and for the past 2 years has played the drums every Sunday for a church located here in Prince George's County, yet sits as first chair tuba player at Benjamin Floyd's Wind Ensemble. Or of my 12-year-old keyboard major, singer, and all the way around great entertainer, in the way in which their participation in this county's public schools art program has benefited them academically, socially, and financially. I could go on and on about the opportunities that have come their way in direct response to the preparation they received through their participation in the arts program, but you would think that I'm a proud mother bragging on her children. While you might be correct, there is an enormous amount of scientific research that demonstrates the correlation between arts education and academic success in other children. A 2002 compendium by Richard Deasy found reading and language skills, mathematics skills, thinking skills, social skills, motivation to learn in a positive school environment to be 6 major advantages, including arts as a part of a core curriculum. Additionally, a 2006 report by Sandra Rupert noted including arts as a core academic subject emphasized equal importance as with core subjects as a means of improving student performance and achieving academic success. Similarly, a 2008 report by the Center of Policy Entrepreneurship identified stimulation, creativity, increased cognitive development, increased academic performance, improvement in social skills, stronger community connections, and a decrease in dropout rates as the advantages of an arts education. Further, based on his experience in education, former Secretary of Education William J. Bennett wrote, "Art, no less than philosophy or science, issues a challenge to the intellect. The great works of music, sculpture, painting, engraving, and all other forms of artistic expression engage the mind, teaching lessons about order, proportion, and genius." Thank you.
Thank you so much. I got confused. That was Miss Jackson, right? Okay. Up next is Nicole Barnett. parent Benjamin Falloy.
Thank you. Good evening. I am Nicole Barnett, and I'd like to begin just by thanking the school board and Dr. Maxwell for your support of the specialty programs in Prince George's County Public Schools. I'm fortunate to have 3 children participate in some form of specialty program here in the county. One is a 7th grader at Benjamin D. Falloy Creative Performing Arts Academy, and another participates in the TAG Center program at Mattapani Elementary School. Both of these schools do an outstanding job of executing their specialty programs. And as many of the educators and parents have already said tonight, there's so much research that consistently reflects a positive relationship between creative performing arts and academic achievement and performance. And talented and gifted programs just play such a unique and vital role in serving gifted and talented students. So as such, I appreciate everything that you're doing possible to maintain the integrity of these programs. I also appreciated your comments in the beginning, sort of informing us as parents of what we can continue to do to ensure that these programs are funded appropriately. So please know that parents are out there supporting you, and to let us know how we can continue to do that. The students that benefit so greatly from these types of programs are just such a bright part of the future for Prince George's County and the world, and so I hope we continue to support our shining stars. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barnett. Our next speaker is William Taylor.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Board of Education and Dr. Maxwell. My name is William Taylor, Fort Washington, Maryland. I'm a longtime resident of Prince George's County, and I currently serve as the chairman of the Maryland State Apprenticeship Council. As a longtime county resident, I've been privileged to have many opportunities to engage with youth in Prince George's County, especially young adults who come from disadvantaged backgrounds. As a result, I've developed a deep, abiding commitment to work to ensure that ample employment opportunity and careers that will enable young people in our county to enjoy a standard of living in a meaningful and one that allows them to contribute to the county's financial resources in a positive way through the payment of taxes. This commitment brings me here tonight to comment on the proposed school year 2015-2016 operating budget as it relates to these employment and career opportunities. As an advocate for opportunities for students who are enrolled in career and technical education programs, particularly those who do not have the opportunity or desire to go to college but who wish to graduate from high school career ready and positioned to become positive and contributing members of our community. My concern is the proposed budgetary changes that will have a negative impact on the construction trade programs and the high school fire science program in year 2015, 2016, and beyond. I have observed the proposed budget and other official documents such as the 2015 master plan, which it appears that the construction trade program has been a core focus of the career technical education program for many years, are slated to be phased out at a time when the potential of employment and career opportunities in the construction sector are looming large on the immediate horizon. I understand and applaud the enhanced focus on preparing students for healthcare careers through the Career Academy programs of studies. However, with the large volume of construction in the county is expected as the proposed regional hospital complex, MGM, Grand Casino, the proposed relocation of the FBI headquarters in Prince George's County, and the Purple Line construction is, if approved, or any other new school construction. I believe phasing out the construction trade program now is premature, ill-advised, and ill-timed. Who will? Given the construction project slated to come out this way and proposed Prince George's County, I ask that the board to be forward-thinking and not lose the opportunity to prepare Prince George's County students for employment and careers in the construction trade. I also ask the school board to act now to to take a proposal to cut the board vital program off the table in this 2015-16 program. We cannot allow the employment career opportunity to be given to workers imported
Thank
from
you,
other
Mr.
school
Taylor.
systems.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Taylor. Thank you. We got another parent over there. You can work with her on the commas, Mr. Taylor. Thank you, sir. Our next speaker is Bob Ross, president of NAACP Prince George's chapter.
Good evening, Dr. Maxwell. Ford. We can differ on issues. For example, we will be going down and fighting hard for the budget and getting more money into the budget. And as we've been looking at this issue of the EL schools, you know, we still differ on that. And as we look at it in the budget, we don't approve that line item in there. The NAACP has a long history dedicated to fighting for civil rights and advocating for justice, promoting equality for all people. Lately, the Prince George's school system has begun to institute a program that the school to district administrative state is to address the diminishing disparity in academic achievement in EL students. We salute any organization in attempting to achieve that goal. A primary question that remains is whether or not the project provided an opportunity solution to the issue. Therefore, that and other questions arise due to the exclusion of many in the community from the discussion and decision-making process and initial adoption of the program and later in the development, despite attempts to retain information regarding the inception, the vetting, and research have not been successful addressed by the school district, even though we submitted a FOIA request and got most information that we need. The attached document detail concerns questions still outstanding relating to the development and implementation of the EL program by the school district. The document also features other issues pertinent to the student of the Latino, African, and other students in the Prince George's County. In closing, the NAACP appreciates the efforts of all parties seeking to better the academic achievement for students in the county. And that's about a 5-page document that we have. But we applaud. And what I normally do is go back and look at history and where we are. Where we have separate and unequal schools, which we feel the EL schools are at this time, based around the 6th Amendment, the 7th Amendment, the 14th Constitution, and so forth. It's open discussion. It can't be a one-way discussion that excludes the African American community in the participation in this discussion. And we was excluded from that conversation. And now it's time for us to rehash this conversation because we put a lot of work in and I put our teams, our lawyers to work at this, and we still have some serious questions that we need to concern. We're not opposed. America is a great country. We welcome everybody to the country, but there's rules that have to be followed. And the law, we follow the law as laid out by the Brown versus Board of Education, and we hold to that. Thank you very much for this opportunity to speak for the board tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Our next speaker is Nicole Nelson, John Hanson Montessori PTSA. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening. My name is Nicole Nelson, and I'm a parent of a 3rd and 4th grader at John Hanson Montessori School. Since we joined the John Hanson Montessori community, I have witnessed devastating cuts to our program. We have lost 4 classroom teachers, a data specialist, a reading specialist, a full-time dance teacher, and a full-time art teacher, just to name a few positions. These cuts have happened over the past 3 years. But what is most disheartening as a taxpayer and a concerned parent is new initiatives and programs were being funded while our program was nearly gutted. Our principal has done a tremendous job at maintaining the program while demands continue to increase, but resources continue to decrease. The John Hanson Montessori community deserves your full fiscal attention this budget cycle. We urge the Board of Education to invest in existing successful programs like John Hanson Montessori so we can be great by choice. We want more funding to restore our 4 teaching positions, data specialists, reading specialists, full-time dance teacher, and full-time art teacher positions. And also, our 214 plus membership will be actively involved in this process. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nelson. Our next speaker is Christina Wren.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to adjust this mic. I'm a little taller. Good evening, members of the board and active members of our Prince George's County community. I'm Christina Wren, a dedicated product and now mother of 3 children, 2 of which are in the public school system in Prince George's County. I am here today to stress the importance of the rebuilding of Glenarden Woods Elementary School, to ask for the expansion of full-day pre-K throughout the county without financial restriction, but also to emphasize the importance of continued priority funding of the Spanish immersion program here in the county. I currently have a kindergartner enrolled at Phyllis C. Williams Elementary School in the immersion program. His growth in the language has been phenomenal. Just learning of the program shortly before school started, my son essentially showed up on the first day knowing little to nothing. Under the instruction of his amazing teacher, Miss Toledo, a native of Spain, he is progressing beautifully. He knows all of his letters and their sounds. He can count past 100, easily applies his mouth skills bilingually, and is reading and understanding above grade level tests, and is truly fostering a love of the language. With this being a first-year program, naturally there will be adjustments to be made. Supporting the full immersion model is of importance to me, something we currently do not have. It is in hopes that in asking for additional funds that this will help to create a true full immersion model where everyone from administration on down is able to and excited about fostering the development of our children in their target immersion language. Raising educated, globally ready children should be everyone's priority. I am anxious to see how my child and all the other children in the immersion program progress over the coming years. I have another child who will soon be school-aged. My commitment to this program and with my current and future scholar will rest on your shoulders. I believe that their success, bless you, is directly correlated. Get a tissue. I'm sorry. I believe that their success is directly correlated to the continued priority funding and development of the Spanish immersion program here in Prince George's County. I think you want to come back, Pierce, quickly. Pierce, come back. Come back. Thank you for your attention, your time, and support. And Pierce would like to say, what would you like to say? Are you going to say something? Thank you.
Thank you. Trust me, with a face like that, he didn't have to say a word. Thank you. Our next speaker is Rachel Frey, Robert Goddard French Immersion, PTA.
I am Rachel Fry, and this is Laura Rummelsberg, and we are members of the PTA at Robert Goddard French Immersion School, soon to be the Dora Kennedy French Immersion School, as the board has approved a new name for us. But Laura is a new parent at French Immersion and has prepared a really nice statement, so I'm going to ask her to present that.
Hello, board members and Dr. Maxwell. Thank you for having us here this evening. My name is Laura Rummelsberg, and my son is a first grader at Robert Goddard French Immersion School in Greenbelt. For those of you not familiar with our school, Robert Goddard French Immersion School is the second oldest immersion school in the country, serving 575 students from kindergarten to 8th grade. Students are taught all subjects in the French language by teachers who are native French speakers from around the world. In 2014, it was recognized as a National Blue Ribbon School by the Department of Education, one of only 337 nationwide, one of 10 in Maryland, and the only school in Prince George's to receive the honor. One of the reasons my family moved to Prince George's County was that in doing so, there was a possibility of our children being able to go to a public French immersion school. It was important to me that my children go to a public school, as I'm a product of the public school system and a firm believer in it. I also have relatives living in France on both my mother and father's side of the family, and have learned French myself from a relatively young age, 9 years old, eventually minoring in it at university. I was extremely excited about the prospect of my children being able to become bilingual in a public school, learning a language that is part of our family's cultural heritage. In addition, at Robert Goddard French Immersion, they would be exposed from teachers from all over the world, instilling in them respect and appreciation of people from all different cultures. Lastly, it provides children with the skills to be able to better compete in a global economy. French is spoken on 4 continents: Europe, North America, Africa, and Asia. The opportunities our children will have available to them will be so much greater because they will have mastered this second language. Our family's experience with the school, although short, has been wonderful. My first grader's comprehension of French amazes me. He is even confident enough in his language skills that he corrects my French. His accent is like someone who is a native speaker, even at 6 years old. He is thriving there, and my husband and I are looking forward to sending our 3-year-old daughter there once she is in kindergarten. We are grateful for the school and that we are able to be a part of it. Additional budget cuts, specifically staffing cuts, would undermine the school's ability to do what it does best, and the school is already challenged by its current budget. Our principal, Monsieur Abi, opted not to have an assistant principal in order to keep some of the specialties teachers like art, music, and PE on staff. Classrooms run out of basic supplies by mid-year, which I think probably a lot of the schools in the district have this happen to them. My school's teacher recently made a request for copy paper and pencils to be sent to the classroom. Robert Goddard Immersion School is a success story for the school district. And because of that, it should be valued and appreciated, and I respect that you take in consideration that when you're making the budget for this year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you both so very much. Our next speaker is Monique Worrell.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to address you all. Thank you for the Spanish immersion programs throughout the county. I am not sure our family would have joined the public school system had we not been selected to attend one of the immersion programs. As an active duty service member, I appreciate the value of a second language and the many doors it will open for our children. We were fortunate enough to be selected from the waiting list to attend Phyllis E. Williams' Spanish immersion program, and I am truly inspired by the dedication and tenacity of the Spanish immersion coordinator, the Spanish immersion teachers, and the Spanish immersion parents at Phyllis E. Williams. I am a part of a cadre of parents that have formed a Spanish immersion Facebook and listserv to better communicate school happenings with one another and problem solve when we experience hiccups along the way. We, the Spanish immersion parents, resurrected the PTO at our school to re-engage and re-energize the parent community. There isn't a day that goes by that I attend Phyllis E. Williams that I don't see Spanish immersion parents in the classrooms assisting teachers and students, or read a post on Facebook with a resource to assist our children with pronunciation or other language acquisition tools. Spanish immersion parents have come in on the weekends to assist the Spanish immersion coordinator to catalog, label, and download Spanish immersion learning apps on the iPads for classroom use. Spanish immersion parents have hosted off-campus events to provide Spanish immersion students and staff opportunities to celebrate winter holidays through the Spanish cultural lens. I am among an awesome group of parents who are engaged and endeavor daily to make the Spanish immersion program at Phyllis E. Williams Blue Ribbon worthy. And I look forward to paving the way for each Spanish immersion class, 5th grade and beyond. I am aware that we are entering a lean fiscal environment for the 2015-2016 school year, but I ask that the board members continue to support the current Spanish immersion programs throughout the county and provide the personnel, technical, and material resources needed to achieve academic excellence through purposeful community and parental engagement. Thank you again for standing up the Spanish immersion program for such a time as this. Thank you.
Thank you so very much, Ms. Worrell. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the final speaker. Let me just say, as we conclude, that this evening your eloquence, your passion, your commitment, and your knowledge has been humbling. And we are so grateful that you are advocating on behalf of your children and on behalf of Prince George's County Public Schools. Our job, as you know, is not an insignificant one. We know we can't say yes to every request. We know that even what we have is not enough. And we know that we face danger to have significantly less. So please remember, as we talked earlier, that your advocacy cannot end here. Far too often when you're talking to us, you are preaching to the choir, as you all know. So we need your voices heard in Annapolis. We need your voices heard at County Council, and we need your voices heard at the County Executive. We need you to come back here often as well. We convene again on February 24th, where we plan to put forward an ambitious and aggressive budget that will meet the needs of every student, every staff member, and every parent in Prince George's County Public Schools. We know that after February 24th, that's when the real work begins. So we invite you to join us February 24th and beyond as we fight for what we know each and every one of our children deserve. And at that, ladies and gentlemen, this budget hearing is concluded. Thank you very much.